Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, the Paranormal Portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. What's up, all you crazy people? I've missed you too. I see you in the chat. Yup, we got one hell of a show for you tonight. So, to start it off, here's a little something special. That's right, it's the Cisco Cho Show. This is crazy. I can't wait to be doing this tonight. I've missed y'all. It's been a week. Let's bring on Donny Cho Faux Show. Join me in here tonight. Can you get in here? Hold on one second. We are going to have all kind of issues tonight. Wait till I tell you what's going on. And here we go. Hello.
Hey. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you wonderful,
okay.
Man. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Hello to this wonderful chat. First, I have to say hi to everybody. Thanks for being here, Donny. This has been a heck of a...
Thanks for asking me to come.
It's been a subject for a show. I mean, Cisco, we dig a little deeper. We if you don't know what goes on here when we do the Cisco, we'll take a subject. Donny goes and he runs and he follows his rabbit holes and he digs down and he says, "You won't believe what I found." And the whole time, all week, I'm texting him going, "Guess what I found?" And I'm going to do this one, and he's going in that direction. And then we come together on the day of, and we kind of try to structure it as best we can so we can give you guys a full show. And tonight, it's been absolutely crazy. Before we even tell you really how we're digging in here, I've got to get in here and say hi to this wonderful chat. Grey Wolf, hi, darling. How you doing? Mairead, hi, darling, all the way out there in Nottingham. We have a little Robin Hood for you tonight. I put a clip in just for you, Mairead. You're welcome. And let's see. We got Blue. We got Patriot 174 Hello, darling. Hello, Jackie. Welcome back. I mean, gosh, it's been so long. Chris, Uncommon
Belief.
A while. Yeah, Todd, Jose up in here. This is great. And I love we put the extra little bit in there for the intro to let everybody get in here, because I notice sometimes, people take 10, 15 minutes. I don't know if they're getting notifications or not. Mark, welcome in. You see Linda, hello. I didn't see Carol or Cassie. They'll probably be popping in here. I think I saw PETA here at the beginning, first one in. Hello, everybody. We have missed you so much. There's PETA. How you doing, sweetie? Vixen, hi, darling. So let's get into it. Donny and I did not know. Hi, Glenn. Hi, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. First of all, first things first, prayers, happy energy, and good thoughts to Steve. I have proof of life. He is doing well. He basically just had a flu. He says it's not the Rona. He knows what he has, and he's doing great. Donny, you said there's a little something going on with the channel, maybe. Is that why? I haven't seen. I've been working so hard. I don't know what's going on.
Well, his channel's been down for like the last week or so, and everyone who's a loyal follower of that channel, 13 Past Midnight, a lot of whom are in this chat right now, are all jonesing. Because I'm jonesing right now. I'm missing. I'm like, Steve.
I do too.
My 11 o'clocks are not the same.
Right.
I'm sitting in front of my PlayStation all depressed.
Oh, no. Yeah. What about, now, is it the 13 Past Midnight channel? Him and Sandy that do after the after show?
Like every day.
Oh, jeez. I hope it's coming back. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I did talk to him yesterday and this morning. He's fine, but we didn't get any big conversation, so I didn't know what was going on with the channel or what wasn't. I just thought he was sick and taking a couple of days off. He assures me he'll be here tomorrow. We are doing part 2 of Tennessee, Haunted Tennessee with Eric. It was so good, the first one. We just didn't have time in 2 hours to hit it all, so we invited him back.
Yeah.
And that's usually really nice and easy for Steve because he doesn't have to dig down or study anything. It's all right there on top of his head because that's his whole wheelhouse right there. And him and Eric have a good time. And I just learned so much because these 2 Tennessee boys talking, so it's great. He should be here tomorrow. If not, it'll be Eric and I and this wonderful chat. So I've missed you all. Thank you so much for understanding last weekend. I knew it was going to be crazy with the Valentine's Day and coming in and not being able to, not even knowing how late I was going to work. So I just figured it was best to let you guys know. So here we are, and we are back. And boy, do we have a show for you. So Donnie, I think we should tell him. I started digging around and I said, it was before Valentine's Day, and I said for the next Sis Joe show, I found a little something out about Charles Lindbergh. Now, I take you back to 1978. I don't know how much you guys know about it. Hello, Sasha Bell, how you doing? And you should have a wrench too. If anybody loses their wrench, please let me know. I have to go into YouTube Studio on my laptop and change that. And then I find all these people got put in the sandbox, and I don't know how they got in there with all those crazy bots and stuff. So let me know. I don't do it. It's YouTube. And I think you're only allowed to have so many mods, so they shift them every once in a while, something like that. I don't know. But I'm so happy too, Patriot. We're just having Chris Jarvis. This is Joe. So anyway, Lindbergh, right? So in 1978, I'm a sophomore in high school, and you know, anytime we had to do reports, all of us who loved the paranormal, supernatural, if we could get away with doing one on, I think Al was here and he was talking about doing reports on Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or something. Well, I did one on Lindbergh. It was, we were studying those times, and I picked Lindbergh and I started studying the whole trial. It was the trial of the century. This was before OJ. It was huge. You can't even wrap your head around how big this trial was. This guy was America's hero because he basically flew from New York to Paris solo in the Spirit of St. Louis. And that was the name of the plane. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on during the flight. He said he was talking to spirits and things like that. And I was really interested in that whole aspect. But the Lindbergh kidnapping was what drew me because we were doing crimes. And at the time, you figure 1978, and books that you could get out of the library, the Madison County Library, as well as the school library. That's what I had, and probably encyclopedias. So even with that information, I was so not on board with Bruno Hoffman doing the crime. If he did, I remember the last page I put up a pretty good case for the fact that if he was involved in it, it was a small compartmentalized area of the crime rather than the single and sole person, very much like the JFK shooting and Oswald, where they're trying to say one person was it. I wasn't buying it. I thought back then there was a lot of falsified evidence. Once they found him, they were very pushed. It was about 2 years after the actual crime where it came about, and I'll be telling you a little bit more detail about it. But the whole thing with the ladder, and that he got a board out of his attic, and it matched and everything else, it just wasn't fleshing with me.
I think for some of the younger people in the chat, maybe a quick
we have a whole thing
rundown
on that.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a whole thing on it. But that was the whole thing. So Charles Lindbergh was this great, he was really brought up in the late 20s, early 30s was when he was really having his heyday. He was basically a pilot. And he was very much into, he was shy, he didn't like public speaking, but he decided he really liked the power that was behind it. So he grew slowly into enjoying speaking in front of crowds and everything else. So we're going to go, I've got a couple of videos here. This subject, basically the whole thing about Lindbergh, is something popped up in my YouTube. And I watched it and I was astonished that now that all these documents are being declassified, you figure how many years now since the 30s and early, late 20s. And these documents are coming out. And there's been a new book written and a lot of research done on Lindbergh kidnapping and Charles Lindbergh himself. Mm-hmm. And it turned up that it's very possible he was not just a Nazi sympathizer, but a Nazi. And we're here to kind of explain a little bit of what that means. How many people that were stood up as heroes or stars or, inventors and, wonderful, buildings named after them and airports and, rocket centers and things. And we find out that they're not who they were portrayed to be. And I think it's just as important now as it was then to look back and see a little bit of how we were maybe fooled or we were fed a bunch of a fairy tale. And we're going to take some of that glitter and fancy stuff off and show you a little bit about what's inside. So tonight we're going to be doing Operation Paperclip. When you'll find, if you're not familiar with that, you're going to hear a little bit more about that. We sat and we talked, Donny and I, over the past couple weeks here about how we really didn't want to get into this is probably one of the darkest, ugliest times in our history. If really any place you dig around in our history, you're going to find darkness and crappy stuff. But this one's really bad. And I want to go ahead, if Donny wants to dedicate it, he's more than welcome, and I urge him to do so. But for my portion of this tonight, I want to dedicate it to the people that survived, the people that lived on in spite of all this ugliness, the people that found a way to love, and just in spite of it all, to laugh again and to live again. And I think that you can't do that if you keep covering everything up and throwing it under the rug. We need to put it out in the sunlight. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. We're doing facts and truth tonight, guys, but we're going to try not to get too dark, and we're going to try to touch a lot of bases. And then Donny and Laura and Dylan, and quite possibly Steve, are going to do a round table on some of the deeper rabbit holes that go in every direction. So that's my dedication tonight, to, in spite of the darkness and the evil, that we find the light, we find the truth, we put it out front, and we achieve and excel in spite of it all, and bring that light forward. How about you, Donny?
I remember before, a little behind the scenes for the chat, I remember Cisco and I will often text each other back and forth, spitballing ideas for topics and shows. Yep. And I got back from my brother's wedding last week, and I messaged Cisco, and I was like, "So what are we doing next week?" And Cisco's like, "Nazis." And I'm like, "Ooh, we going there, Cisco?
We go
really?
in there.
We going there?" And Cisco's like, "Yeah, we going there, baby." And I'm like, "Let's go for it. Let's go deep."
Yeah.
I guess in terms of dedication, what this whole thing has taught me is that we've been talking about spiritual superheroes. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? There are supervillains. They're out there. You got to be able to spot them. But there are also heroes that go unnoticed, hidden, without much recognition, and are inspirations. And those people need to be commended. They need to be honored. Yes. And we need to have the wisdom and foresight to spot the hidden villains.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. And that's the thing. And I think a lot of this stuff starts, and, Donny, you've got this part of it. If Uncommon Belief could stick an ashtray around the corner, that would be like awesome. Yeah. I'm just talking out there to the chat. If anybody wants to bring me an ashtray, I wouldn't turn it down. Either way, I'm going to have to use my skull cup, and that won't be good. But But yeah, I mean, that's the way it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to start it out slow. I'd like to start with Lindbergh since he's the one that started it for me. And in doing so, there is a young man, and I've absolutely loved him. I tell you what, I never tire of finding great channels on YouTube. A lot of you guys have great channels, and a lot of you, know terrific channels that just get you through and that you're always delighted to see pop up with a new vid.
Of course they know terrific channels. They're here, aren't they?
Yeah, they're here. Yeah. We try so hard for you guys. So I found this young man, and what he does is people donate to his channel and give him ideas, and he goes around, he travels, and he'll do like 5 or 6 in one road trip, and he goes to different graveyards, and it sounds terrible, but it's really wonderful. He goes to different graveyards, and he visits the graves of people who were involved in a certain story. So it's going to be history, it's going to be unsolved crime or mystery or things like that, and he always goes and he honors the person at the grave. And in one instance, I thought just about it was wonderful. Thank you. It works. See that? Isn't that great? Would you wish you could do that? It's better than DoorDash. Chat Dash. So yes, it's Faces of the Forgotten, Jackie. Absolutely. Absolutely wonderful. We're going to drop that link. I know I sent it out to some of the mods today. I didn't get to everybody. And, but anyway, please go check him out. Just give him a subscribe and watch it. It's fantastic. I love the way he handles himself. He's a very honorable man. And he even went to a blues singer that was, I believe, in the 50s. She passed in the 70s. She was popular in the 50s, and she didn't have a gravestone. So he went and he built her a cross and put it there, and then contacted her family, who was some of her grandchildren were still alive, and asked permission for the chat and his donors to buy a headstone for this woman so she was not forgotten. And we all watched it get placed, and it was an amazing thing. But he did one on Lindbergh. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you, and it's got a little piece of it in there for Faces of the Forgotten, and then we'll go in it from there. Are you ready, Donnie?
Ready.
Here we go, chat. Hey, Todd, how you doing, sweetie? Thank you, Mario, for the music.
Charles is buried in Hawaii, and I'm not going to be going out there anytime soon, but I really wanted to tell you an update about Charles Lindbergh that is shocking. I mean, his life is already a shocking story, and as some of you may know, a lot of bad things. Creepy kind of guy. Oh, that's my opinion. Anyway, it gets a lot creepier with this book that came out. Lisa Pearlman is her name, and this book came out in 2020, I believe, with a theory that he possibly may have done, in addition to a lot of the bad things he represented and did, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but this kind of adds on the list in a big way, and it is related to his little boy, Charles Jr., who was kidnapped and murdered. Crime of the century. So let's take a walk and talk about this story.
Okay, so that's his channel there. This is the book by Lisa Pearlman, The Man Who Got Away. I highly recommend you check on this. It's amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and narrate the story. In 1932, Charles and Anne Morrow had a baby, Charles Lindbergh Jr. Now, the picture you see here is he was, of course, a year old. This is his 1-year-old birthday. They purchased a house. He wanted to be secluded. They purchased a house in Hopewell, New Jersey. It was very secluded. It was being built for them. They only stayed there on the weekends. Now, keep in mind, this is very important for the story. They would always leave on a Monday morning, no later than Monday afternoon. Charles was extremely rigid. He had this persona about him when you talk, about the frat he was involved in, the schools he went to. He was very big, practical joker, and they were often sinister practical jokes, to the point of one of his roommates. There was a water pitcher in the room in the college, and he would never fill the water pitcher. So Charles thought it would be a great idea to fill it with, I've heard, both bleach and kerosene. I've heard both stories, and 2 on the kerosene, 1 on the bleach. And apparently the guy came in, got up at night and just started drinking it down. And he got enough into his system that it sent him to the hospital. That was one of his practical jokes. There were many like that, and often they did not turn out the way he wanted. And he was never sorry or ever had remorse, except for the one with the water pitcher. He said that maybe he shouldn't have done things quite that way, was the verbatim what he said, but very little remorse. So there's that. Now, he was extremely rigid. He ran his household that way. If you think about it, the way he was very organized, very direct, strict schedule. You don't want to get off the schedule. His schedule for his child was at 6 o'clock he was to be in his room. Charles usually got home about 7 or 8. The baby was to be in bed before he got home, point blank. No exceptions. And the nanny followed those rules. There was a nanny, a nurse, a cook, a man and a woman, and the man sometimes also did chauffeur and butler and things like that. But they were a married couple who lived over the garage. Now, the strict regimen for the baby was just as I said, and at 10 o'clock, the nurse was supposed to go at 10 o'clock, not 9:55, not 10:05. She would get in trouble, and she would get her money docked for it if she was a minute late, one way or the other. So at 10 o'clock, she was supposed to go in and wake the baby, feed him and change him again, and then he was supposed to go in for his all-night nap and then be up in the morning, and there was similar things for the morning. But basically, what happened was the baby was born oxygen depleted, as well as some other things. And what caused this, medical documents and some people kind of pointed to this instance, that when Anne was 7 months pregnant, she was learning how to fly. It was required by her husband that she do this. She was interested in being a pilot, but not quite as rigid as he was pushing it. And she was just over 7 months pregnant, and they were she wasn't feeling well, and he made her go up in the plane. They stayed up extra long. They were doing all kind of dips and dives and the pressure and things like that. She was extremely sick after it. The next day she wound up going to the hospital, and from that point on she was prescribed bed rest. And I believe, now this is just my opinion, that that definitely had something to do with the complications of the pregnancy, or else, she wouldn't have been put in bed right after. And, it makes common sense, right? Okay, moving on. That's 1932. Now, keep in mind, he had already been America's hero, because he did that one-man solo flight from New York to Paris. When he landed in Paris, he had no idea the amount of people that were going to be there. It was a huge deal. It was nothing compared when he got back to New York. It was the largest ticker tape parade ever to this day. So you can imagine, the Yankees winning and all that wasn't bigger. Nope, Lindbergh. Okay, so he's got all that, and he's starting to get the prestige. He's starting to get the attention. And then this happens. Now, the odd things around this night, everything I told you about the rigid schedule, keep in mind I said they only stayed in this house on weekends. Well, the baby was sick, and Lindbergh instructed the nurse to give him extra cold medicine. He wanted him sleeping. He told Anne they were not leaving until Tuesday, and he wanted to stay there through Monday. He, like I said, he started off very shy, but he was getting very used to the power and the prestige and the attention, and he was starting to do an awful lot of scheduled speaking. And he was always prompt, always on time, and always showed up. Except this one night, here on March 1st, 1932, he was supposed to do a speaking engagement at 8 o'clock that night. And he called them and said he wouldn't be showing up, that he wasn't feeling well. Okay? So there it is. You tell me who knew that they were going to be there that Monday night to kidnap a child, when their structure was always to be gone by then. Somebody knew. Inside job. Makes perfect sense. So now, little Charles Jr. Lindbergh was born with a lot of defects. His head, he had a lot of different medical terms I don't pretend to understand, but he had something that his head was larger than normal. His skull was still soft at a year old. And a year and a half old, and the doctor was very concerned with that. He had brittle bones, he had rickets, they prescribed a lot of vitamin D, a lot of sun, which is why you see him out here in the sun all the time. He had something odd with his feet. It was like a curvature of his toes that made it very hard for him to walk. And Charles Lindbergh showed very little love to this child. And once he started finding out that he was sick and had to keep going to the doctors, that's when all those strict plans set in, to where he was coming home, the baby was asleep, he was leaving, the baby was asleep. He didn't want to see the baby, didn't spend time with the baby. The only time he was around the child is when they had press or visitors or something like that. And a comedian from back then, I think it wasn't Roy Rogers, it was another one around that time, was over there and tells a little story of how he was there, and he thought it was funny how the dad interacted with the baby. He said the baby would get up and try to walk, and Charles Lindbergh would throw a pillow at him and knock him on his butt. So much so, and so many times, that as soon as Charles picked up the pillow, the child would just sit down. Other people in the room thought it was horribly sad and very mean. The comedian thought it was funny. I think it's mean, and I think it shows personality that this guy didn't like his kid. I don't know how else to put it. If you knew about what he thought, now we start getting into the thought process, the organization, everything strict, everything one way. He was extremely into eugenics. He was very much into a race that was stronger than others. He was very... he had no qualms about people with disabilities being put out of their misery. As he was growing up early in the farm, that's what they did to runts. They let them die if it was the run of the litter. These kind of things, and that's how he explained it. When the child... was kidnapped, he was downstairs. He said he heard some kind of wood breaking. Nobody else in the house heard it. The nurse went in at 10 o'clock. The baby was not there. She checked the whole room. There was one window and one window latch in that room that was broken. And after everything in that house is written down on a note, if there was one thing out of place, he would hire somebody to fix it. Yet he did not fix that window. It was the only one that didn't work, and that's supposedly the window that the ladder was placed under and that the baby was taken out of. The nurse checks the room. She goes running to Anne and says, "Is this one of Mr. Lindbergh's jokes again?" Because 2 other times he had taken that child and hid them. One time in the garage and another time in a closet, and let everybody in the house run around thinking the baby was missing. So they thought he had done it again and just was pulling a practical joke. Can you imagine such a thing to a 2-year-old child? Now the child's almost 2, but when the child went missing, Charles gave the police a year-old photo, as you see here on this help wanted sign. Anne was very upset about that. Help wanted. The missing child. So Anne was very upset by that because she said that it was causing her to forget what her own child looked like. Now, the baby was found. These gentlemen here supposedly found it. The one man was driving, said he had to relieve himself because he was African American. They would not let him in the bathroom, so he went around a tree. And I think he accidentally stumbled onto the body. The official story is that he was driving by, and I guess they didn't want to say he had to pee. So he said that he saw a burlap bag under a bunch of leaves and sticks laying by a tree from 75 yards away from the highway. And he stopped and he went to go. That just doesn't make any sense. I think he accidentally stumbled on it. So here is Charles in his heyday in front of the Spirit of St. Louis. And along with that, you're going to see some pictures of what happened with the crime. There is little Charles, the baby. Of course, the wanted information poster for the kidnapping, the house with the ladder, and then the ladder itself with the police all checking it out. Now, I want you to take a look at this ladder. This was a ladder that was made in sections, supposedly easy to carry by one person. There were 2 sets of footprints that left the window. Charles, in the first report, was that after he went up to the room to see what was going on, he sent the butler to the store for flashlights. He didn't have flashlights. He wanted to go outside and see what was going on. He had a flashlight, and he went outside and looked. He didn't say he found a ladder. The ladder was found something 75 feet away in the woods, and it was found in sections as it is here. The ladder goes together in pieces, and the famous part about this, the most famous rung on this ladder, is called the 16th rung. There's a book written about the 16th rung of that ladder, because the 16th rung is what supposedly got Bruno Hauptmann fried in the electric chair, because that board supposedly matched the grain and wood in the attic of Bruno Hauptmann. Supposedly. And there's Bruno there. That was the sketch. There was a lot of things going on. There were some strange people involved in the ransom letters and everything going back and forth. But basically what it comes down to is a ransom was asked for via a note that was found on the window that Charles refused to open. Nobody saw it in the room when they went in the first time. Charles supposedly found it afterwards on the window, would not open it till the police arrived, and the ransom note asked for $50,000, which was paid in a park by a man named Cemetery John, who was helping with the situation, and handed off, and that was it. You didn't see the child, nothing else. Meanwhile, the child's body is found. 2 years go by. And this man, Bruno Richard Hauptmann, went to the gas station and paid for about $1 worth of gas with a $10 gold-backed note. Now, the hard part about that is gold-backed notes were outlawed. It was actually a misdemeanor to spend them. So that had been going on about 1.5 years, and the gas station attendant was scared he was going to get stuck for the money. So he wrote down the license plate of Bruno on the gold-backed dollar and turned it into the bank. The banks were being told to look out for this money, and bam, the next thing you know, they're in Bruno Hauptmann's house. He had a solid alibi. He was a carpenter. He was at work. All of everything that he had going for him should have got him out. But slowly things started to change. The witnesses started to back away. Even his boss changed his story. Bruno was really getting railroaded. And when you have someone like Charles Lindbergh speaking at your trial, as you see here, you're pretty much in the drink. Bruno kept his innocence to the very last. The very day he was executed for this crime, he was offered $90,000 in 1935, and to be given to his wife and child, who he loved dearly, and he still said, "No, I did not do this," and they executed him. So, as it goes on, we start digging into a little bit more in Charles Lindbergh, and what we start finding under the layers is the people that he had a little bit of dealings with. And as you see here, he did indeed have dealings with the Nazis. How deep did those go? Well, he was invited to check out the German Air Force. In fact, test drive their planes When he came back, he was giving speeches that said that America should not get in the war to help Europe, that Europe was doomed, that nothing could beat German and their superior equipment. He was impressed with their uniforms. He was impressed with their lockstep. He was impressed with their organization. He was impressed with their views. He was, in fact, a eugenist. He believed in everything they believed in. He had no problem with going against a race of people because of their skin color or because of their beliefs. He believed, in fact, he even told his children to have as many children as you can, so my seed is superior and it should be spread throughout, which is very Genghis Khan of him, I believe. So he was very much in tune with them. As you see here, he was, like I said, he did a lot of speeches, but they kept it down. They still kept that he was a hero. He went on to have, I believe, 3 more children with Anne, but he led another life as well. And we'll let this part tell you right about here.
Nennen wir es mal Tour d'amour.
Call it the Tour d'Amour, the love route of Charles Lindbergh.
The Tour d'Amour. Charles Lindbergh had 4 other families. He had 17 kids from the last count I got. It may be, conflicting on that. 3 of them have come forward in the past, I think, 20 years. DNA is tested, and they are, in fact, Charles Lindbergh's children. He had 4 different families going all at once, and he just kept going around and spending a little bit of time with each one. Now, the really sickening part of this story is, and I will let Lisa Pearlman tell you if you're interested, there are multiple interviews with her. She is fantastic. I highly recommend to listen to a couple of those. The most notorious is a very good one on YouTube. She speaks in depth of the doctor he got involved with when Charles Jr. was still sick. He got involved because his sister-in-law had a bad heart and she needed cardiovascular surgery, and this doctor was it for cardiovascular. In fact, he designed connecting valves and veins and things that are still used today. However, he was very into eugenics, and he also wanted to do transplants, and he could not keep the organs fresh. He had some devices that Charles was helping him work on. Charles was a very good engineer, and he did improve on it. And while he was there, he got very involved with the whole idea of the organ donating and this kind of stuff. And they were actually getting not just animals, but children from a local insane asylum. There are letters that actually say from the president of the insane asylum, I have a couple of Phoebes for you. When are you guys coming over? And I've read letters, and it's, his words are absolutely disgusting at this time of his life. Now, as he moves on, he somewhere must have had a change of heart, because in the latter part of his life, he was spending a lot of time with indigenous people of Hawaii and Africa, changed his name, and got very involved with nature over science. In fact, there was someone who knew him toward the end of his life and said if you gave him the choice between a plane and a bird, he would choose the bird. He is buried here in Hawaii by himself, completely alone. His last request to be buried in clothes, no shoes, no buttons, and no zippers, so he could go back into the earth without disturbing nature a single way. However, if he was involved in the killing of this child, whose body was found without its organs, just like it would have been if he worked with the doctor. I can imagine how his last of his life was spent. To see the look on his face here, I hope he was pondering over the pain he caused and the wake of pain he left behind. Again, the man who got away.
Some of those stories made him sound like he was a sociopath, especially when you're talking about all the pranks that he would pull on people.
Yeah.
That's like very sociopathic behavior.
I was absolutely, I'm shaken to think about what Anne went through. She had 4 more children. How could you... You know what I mean? I can't wrap my head around it, but it really does look like the evidence and newly disclosed evidence and paperwork, gotten by FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, that he probably was involved in this. Like I said, the baby was found without its organs. Of course, in the paper, they just put, in 1930, they just put that it was attacked by animals. He was the one who went and identified the body. The nurse said the curled toes has to be, and had him cremated within an hour, and that was it. And Anne never forgave him for that, because to her, the baby needed last rites and everything else. And it was just cruel all the way through. But at the end, he's buried in Hawaii. He tried to do some good in the end. I don't know if that can, you know what I mean? But at least he lived long enough to change his ways and maybe look back and, people can change. So in some ways, maybe that's a good ending for that story. So what do you think, Donnie?
Well, it sounds like he was maybe trying to find peace or make amends towards the end of his life. I don't know. Because, I wasn't there with him. I didn't know much about him in his private time and his personal life towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something, but it just got me, and that's what got this whole ball rolling, because like I'm saying, it's 78, I'm looking at him, I don't think Bruno did this. I mean, there was writing on the wall, it was somebody that was attached to the incident, and the name was written on the wall next to the phone, like we used to do back in the day. We'd write on pencil the name and number on the wall, and then it turns out, that was evidence used in court, and then a reporter comes and says he did that because he wanted to get the story, so much stuff, and this man died in the electric chair, innocent, and it's just every which way you look at this. And the Blue Cross Road says here, actually, the eugenics theory back then was a large fad. There were many who were into that, and was one of the few reasons Americans did not want to get into the war. Totally agree, Blue. It was everywhere. And let me see here. I missed another chat here. Somebody was saying something. I'm sorry. I was paying so much attention. Thank you, Jackie, for dropping those links. Patriots, you're saying creepy unsolved adrenochrome makes you think, right? Yeah, it does. And that's one of the whole purposes of this, because I'm saying, they were lying in the paper, they were covering stuff up. This is 1930s. And we're here now. If we don't look at things different at what they're trying to feed us, we don't stop trying to make stupid people famous. If you don't think they're not doing this in Hollywood and propping people up and saying they're this, and this, and they're really other things, it's still happening today, So that's just something to look into. What will be hitting next after Lindbergh there, Mr. Cho?
Well, I think we're going to talk about another American hero who was kind of good looking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what I want to do first, though.
He was okay.
Yeah. Not my type. But he was a cheeky monkey, that's for sure.
He's no Henry Cavill, that's for sure.
I would love to bring up the Jim Mars, because I just think that Jim Mars just coats it so much, if that's cool with you. Is that cool with you if we roll it? Because it's kind of on its own, and I can have a little tea. Yeah. But if you guys are interested at all, Jim Mars is probably one of those people that I put up there with, man, I'd love to buy you a beer. I got to talk to him a couple times on the phone. Brilliant mind. Jim Mars was he was the one who wrote Crossroads, author, so many things. He was definitely an expert on the JFK that whole fiasco, and wrote the book Crossfire. And that's what Oliver Stone did the movie JFK based on. With his approval, Oliver changed a couple things, but Jim Mars, absolutely brilliant, wrote many books, on aliens, Area 51, Your Occulted America, the Illuminati, so many things, the rise of the Fourth Reich. Basically, he's going to tell you, as well as I'm telling you here, that the Nazis didn't lose World War II. No. Germany did. But the Nazis, no, they just spread out. So here you go, right here, and the rise of the Third Reich. Here's a little Jim Mars, and nobody says it better than him as far as I'm concerned. Here you go.
Yes, we defeated Germany in World War II, but we didn't defeat the Nazis because the Nazis were still much in power, and they cut deals. They swapped their exotic technology, their rocket technology, their energy manipulation technology, their mind control technology, chemical and technology and pharmaceutical technology to the United States in exchange for immunity. And we brought them in over the war. And in the late 40s and early 50s, John J. McCloy, who had been head of National City Bank, which was one of the largest lenders of money to pre-World War II Nazi Germany, was made High Commissioner of Germany, and he pardoned thousands of unreconstructed Nazis, brought them over to the United States. His protege was Allen Dulles, who then was head of the CIA for many years. And under Dulles, he whitewashed their backgrounds and put them all, these Nazis, into our military-industrial complex. And that began the National Socialist infiltration of the United States system. Back then, the Germans had been very much involved in the occult, if you want to call it that, exotic technology. Yeah, and the question has always been, how did the Nazis get so far ahead of us in science? They were broadcasting the 1936 Berlin Olympics over television. In fact, by the end of the war, they had television-guided missiles. Holy cow, we didn't know that. And there's good reason to believe they actually possessed and had tested a nuclear weapon. But by the time they did not have a reliable delivery system, and by the time they were ready to maybe unleash a nuclear weapon, it was spring of 1945, and the Russians were closing in from the east and the Allies from the west, and it was almost all over. And if they had set off an atomic bomb somewhere, it would not have ended the war. It would have simply meant the total devastation and destruction of Germany. Now, where did they get all this? For years, I'd heard stories that, well, they captured a flying saucer somewhere and they back-engineered it. But yet, every time you try to track those stories, it never went anywhere. And I am now of the opinion, based on information that I have now and based on documentation that has come out of the old Soviet Union now with the collapse of communism, that the Germans had their own remote viewers. Of course, they didn't call it remote viewing because that was a term that was coined back when the CIA and the National Security Agency in this country was studying and working with psychic warfare. But they had the same type thing. Back then, the Germans had been very much involved in the occult, if you want to call it that, all the way back in prior to the 1920s. And they would have seances, and they would have all of these channelings, or whatever you want to call it. But at the bottom line of it is what we call remote viewing. It was the use of these psychic abilities. And the Vril Society, and this was largely based on the philosophies of Madame Blavatsky and her Theosophical Society. They were heavy into that, and of course Hitler was put into power with the help of the Thule-Gesellschaft, or the Thule Society, which was an occult society made up of some of the wealthiest and aristocrats there in Germany and industrialists. And they were big into this stuff, into spiritualism, I think is what they called it back then. And so they, according to the information I have, there was even a unit within the German military called Dr. Greenbaum. And this was basically their remote viewers. And interestingly enough, this was under a broader umbrella program called MAGIC, M-A-J-I-K. And that's really interesting because, as you well know, the Majestic 12 or Magic 12 that's always talked about in the UFO literature being the people at the top who are in charge of the secrecy over UFO technology was MAJIC 12 to begin with, which is the anglicized version of MAJIK, the German version. And I'm wondering if perhaps when we brought their mind control experts and their pharmaceutical experts and their rocket scientists all over here after the war, if we didn't bring some of their psychic scientists too.
There he is. We lost him in 2017. Some books, so many.
And you said he was a nice man?
Oh,
when
yeah.
you talked to him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was most worried about people understanding, you know, to me personally, when I spoke to him, people understanding the truth. He was so upset when Stephen King came out with 11/22/63 because he said now everybody is going to think that Oswald did it alone, and he spent so much time trying to talk about how the magic bullet was crazy and this was crazy. It's like, you have to understand, people, this is what the government and all these groups did together, and they pulled the wool over your eyes, just like Lindbergh, just like so many things have happened. So I saw what you said, Glenn. I understand what you're saying, but you know, I'm not into conspiracy theorist is something that CIA came up with that term back during JFK, if I'm correct. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. I believe that that's when they came up with it, to basically throw aspersion on anybody that was speaking facts or speaking the truth. Jim went through that all his life. His wife kept very private, and they were very private in Texas, but he was just that kind of guy that was just like a no bullshit kind of dude from Texas. And he was actually there at Jack Ruby's bar dancing with a couple there. I've seen pictures of him. He was a young cub reporter in Dallas. He was going to college there, and the night before, not in Ruby's bar, but at the college there in Dallas, and he was up there dancing, and he hung out there because that's where all the police hung out, and that's where all the journalists hung out, and that's where all the maid guys and the mafia hung out. And that's why Jack Ruby was involved with all of them. All of them knew each other. And that's why he was so early into the JFK. And that's what got him started. And he was about the truth. And if he couldn't back it up, he didn't say it. And the reason he didn't is he thought so many people were getting famous on lies, and he wasn't going to do it. And I really got to speak to the man, to speak to his heart. And you know, the only reason I'm putting him up here tonight is because he absolutely deserves to be here. So, in my opinion. So there's that. And, you know, again, everybody, you know, we all have input on this. You know, we've all been there and seen it from different vantage points in our life. I mean, I saw what they did to my people, Donny, for sure. I mean, there's not one culture you can dig back into that we didn't go through something. The thing that bothers me is, why is it taking us so long to realize that evil isn't the way to be, and hatred isn't going to get you anywhere, and love and light is the way to go, because we're not going to evolve in consciousness if we don't do that. But that's that. What do you have to say, Donny, about that stuff? I know you studied on your side a lot of the magic and the where did this whole the whole thing, like Blue brought up that eugenics was big back then. It was a big fad back then about, you know, the Aryan race and that whole thing. Where did all this stuff start? Do you want to take that part? Do you want to do your slides now, and you think this is a good time for that, or what do you want to do?
Oh yeah, we could do that.
You want to do a little bit? We could do a little bit of it, and then, because he was speaking on a couple things that you had here. Now, who is this man?
This is Edward Bulwer Lytton. He was an author and a politician in the UK. He was active in the Victorian era. Mm-hmm. He is the man who, first of all, he was Charles Dickens's writing mentor.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. But the phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword, comes from this guy.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It was a dark and stormy night. That phrase to start a story comes from this guy.
Wow.
And he was initiated in a whole bunch of esoteric secret societies. He knew a lot of mystical stuff and occult knowledge, like deep knowledge. And he would write, a lot of his works were very popular, hugely popular. He's considered one of the fathers of science fiction. And he was the one who came up with the term Vril. And that's a word that you're going to hear pop up throughout the course of our conversation, because a lot of, when people talk about these occult beliefs and these wacky ideas that the Nazis have, you'll often hear the word Vril. And this is the guy that first coined that term.
Now, when we first started talking about Vril, I had no idea. I had just heard about this throughout, dipping in and everything. I actually thought Vril was a race of aliens. And you told me something different. What exactly are they speaking of when they say Vril?
Well, the story is about a guy who goes spelunking looking for mining opportunities with his friend, and he comes across this race of subterranean humanoids that are spiritually and physically way more advanced than us. And Vril is to them the source of their psychic energy. It's an actual substance that they use to control, and through the control of Vril, they're either able to heal, create, destroy. In the right hands, it could be something that can benefit a lot of people, but in the wrong hands, you're a weapon of mass destruction. That's what Vril was. But it was very mysterious. But people latched on to that concept and that word, and that became kind of the catch-all term for like the source for psychic energy. The origin of the Aryan race and eugenics, I think, traces back to Helena Blavatsky.
And that is...
she's not in there on the slides, but she's probably the one who talked about like...
Was that the lady in the Indian dress with the dot and all that was in there? I thought that she might be involved. No.
She was way uglier than her. That lady was
okay.
pretty.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I call it how it is.
Blue Crossroads is asking ant people? I don't know about ant people.
No, I mean, they look humanoid. They look like superior versions of us.
Wow.
Wow.
Now, this guy, you said, was the start.
I need to talk a bit about this guy. This is the guy we really need to know about.
Go ahead.
So, if you're ever wondering who the actual father of that whole philosophy about the Aryan superior race, and then like the lesser races, and that like the Jews need to be exterminated, the genesis of that, the founder of that whole philosophy was this guy. His name was Rudolph von Sebottendorff. And he was a mystic, a scholar. He was active during World War I, and he was a student of Helena Blavatsky, who came up with a lot of the ideas. So, let me break down a little bit of the philosophy of where they're coming from.
Go right ahead.
According to Sebottendorff and Helena Blavatsky, basically, after Atlantis sank into the ocean, there were 5 elder races. And these 5 elder races were the predecessors to all of humanity. And of the 5 elder races, the superior race, the one that was the most powerful and the most advanced, were the Aryans. And they were described, as you would imagine, having blonde hair, blue eyes, giants in stature, just great people. And they were kind of the leaders of Atlantis. And his teaching,
obviously handsome and astonishingly good looking and well put together, like this gentleman we're looking at here, because he's obviously superior.
He's a dime piece.
Yeah, he's a 10. His goes up to 11.
I mean, it's a nice hat, I guess.
I'm sorry.
So this guy basically traveled the world. He spent a lot of his formative years, like he spent a number of years in Egypt studying the pyramids. He spent time in Australia. He spent a lot of time in Turkey and studying under the Sufi Islamic masters. Spent time in Tibet studying with Tibetan monks, learning the secrets of the pyramids. He was involved in a lot of secret esoteric circles, Rosicrucianism, Theosophy. He was actually a student of Theosophy. And during World War II, he started a group called the Tula Society.
Yes.
They were a secret organization of German elites who were active towards the tail end of World War I, where they would, as any secret society would, you'd have like these rich socialites. You had to show your birth papers, but going back 3 generations to prove that you were a full Aryan. And these people would join. It was a social club. They would drink, they would socialize. And then this guy would come out in the robes at the end and teach them the story of like the true origin of the Aryan race and the German people who are their descendants, and is their birthright to basically restore the world back to when it was the 5 elder races before Atlantis sank. That was his MO. And he is basically the guy. With the tool of society was this. What they were doing is, okay, let me break it down to you like this. A while back, you and Steve did a talk on Aleister Crowley, right? Right. Imagine Aleister Crowley, but this time he's in charge of his own paramilitary unit. That was this guy.
That was this guy. He had an army to do something with. Yeah. And I just wanted to say, not to interrupt you, dear heart, Steve, we have proof of life. Steve is doing fine. He was just in the chat. Hello, my love. Hope to see you tomorrow night. If you're not feeling better, don't be afraid to bow out. You just get better. We all love you and we miss you. And get that channel back up and rolling because we miss you so much. Okay, I'm sorry, sweetie.
Okay, no, it's okay. I was just checking out the chat.
That's absolutely amazing. So this guy is the start of it. It goes back. You said even before World War One.
During World War One, towards the end of World War One, he had, and the members of this group were some of the richest and most powerful people, members of the royal family, and basically his belief was that So people associate Aleister Crowley with Satanism and demonic stuff. Right. His spiritual leanings was a little bit different. He was more into the paganism, elementals, nature spirits. He wanted to bring the world back to when Odin and Thor were being worshipped. He wanted to bring Germany back to its cultural roots, back to the pagan times when everyone was praying to Astara and Freya. He saw Jesus as basically a cheap knockoff of Odin that the Jews used, and they stole Odin because there's a story in Norse mythology where Odin is nailed to a tree. Okay. And he's got a spear sticking out of his side. So when he sees that and he sees the story of Jesus, he's like, oh, the Jews just stole our God and they just made it their own and they made it into this cheap knockoff called Jesus Christ. So, but in his mind, the real Jesus was Odin. Okay.
So basically you've got like a group of elite, what they consider elite, because they've actually have to show their papers to prove that they can go back like 3 generations. So it sounds a lot like Illuminati, the Bilderbergs, like Davos, any of these groups that get together and they think that because they're of a blood, certain blood type, a certain bloodline, that they are the ones that can make decisions for everybody. It's usually that high-end 1% that thinks that they can control and overrule everybody. I don't understand why these groups just can't get together and just like, we're just going to be in a club together for everybody who wants to be in it. We're not going to bother anybody else, and we're going to just, eat our Jello and, whatever it is that they do and, party and drink and just feel superior and go on with their lives and leave everybody alone. But they don't. They got to dig in and they got to do horrific things and they've got to try to control those that they consider are under them. And that's what makes me ill, these people.
You could tell they, in their minds, saw themselves as the heroes.
Oh, sure. And they always do. They always do. And, when you ask the people that are being hurt by this, whether it's, whatever it is, that it's just, it just never ceases to amaze me, the psychopaths that get together and do these things, whether it's Skull and Bones or whatever group you want to name that, it gets together and hurts other people, whether it's a religion or whatever. It's just, we've got to rise above this. And I think the only way to know how to do that is to keep to learning from history, because if we don't, we're destined to repeat it, right? This symbol that you sent me, this was the original. This is 1919. Tell us about this.
Well, everyone knows that the swastika is associated with the Nazi Party, and that's the symbol that they've adopted. Rudolph von Sebottendorff was the guy who made the swastika their symbol. He was very interested in ancient languages and rune magic. And one of the symbols that came up a lot for him was the swastika. And, this guy was like traveling in Asia and Tibet, learning from like Hindu masters, Sufi masters, Kabbalah. So, for him, the most important rune was the swastika. That was the swastika being their symbol. That was his decision. Okay, so my main point here is, some people know a lot about World War II history. Some people know like just casually, just maybe stuff they learned from school. But a lot of people are under the belief that Hitler was the one who created the philosophy of the superior Aryan race, and that the Jews needed to be exterminated. Like a lot of people think that he's the one that started the Nazi Party. All of these ideas were established like
by this guy.
When Sebottendorff was teaching about the Aryan race to the German royal family, Hitler was still a soldier in the trenches in World War One. This is the father of that philosophy. Hitler was just mostly its mouthpiece, its spokesperson.
Right.
But this is the guy who learned from all the mystics and learned about the philosophy of Atlantis from Helena Blavatsky, who is the mother of New Age spirituality.
Which is a trip. And a lot of people are in the chat asking, what does this have to do with, why were they against the Jews? Well, they weren't just against, they were against anybody that wasn't exactly like them. You could be white, but if you were white and mixed, then you weren't them anymore. I don't know how Hitler pulled it off, but we all know, at least by now we should, he was half Jewish. And I never understood how he could go about the things he was doing, but it wasn't just that. It was anybody who was gay. If you had, a different colored skin, if you weren't blonde and blue-eyed and Aryan and solid. I mean, these people put up the Hitler Youth. I'm sure before Hitler Youth, there was another junior set of these people, because they always start with the kids and try to raise them up in this thought process. It was, pushing homosexuals off of buildings. It was, it was the horrible machine of hatred and extermination that they were doing. And it was very much Georgia Guidestones, like is going on, now. If you don't know about Georgia Guidestones, we can touch on that down the line. But, they want to get it down to a certain amount of people that they hand choose. I had a brother-in-law like this. I can remember the hate, and I could not understand how in the world he got in this family, but he once stood up and said, I should be in charge of this world, and I want just 100 people to be alive that I handpicked. And I said, I was 10 years old. I said, you sound like Hitler. And I flew across the room, because this guy was just an evil son of a gun. But I can remember at 10, I said, you sound just like Hitler. The hate coming out of you. I could understand at 10, and I don't understand why adults can't, So this is where it all started.
So
great
let
job,
me just
Donny.
give a quick analogy. If
ahead.
if Hitler's Darth Vader, this guy's Emperor Palpatine.
There you go.
Yeah.
And those you youngins in there would understand that statement, I'm guessing. Okay. Now, we touched on the magic, and we touched on, Jim Mars was talking about how they utilized everything. And what do I mean by that? You've heard, I'm sure, all the rumors of, and we're not going to touch too much on, this is about the Nazis and Operation Paperclip and stuff, but we're just trying to make a base here. This is going to be a 2-hour show, so go get your snacks now if you need to, because this is going to be one that goes into another part with a round table. Like I said, Laura and Dylan and Donnie and Steve and I are all going to get down, and we're going to bring up our little rabbit holes on the side. But tonight we're just trying to touch a base. And basically tonight is, we all thought Lindbergh was a hero. If you even knew about him, the younger ones in the crowd, maybe just, wasn't he a pilot? There was so much more to all of that, and innocent people died, and, the things they were doing to kids and experiments and things, and everything was just washed under the table. If we keep pushing this stuff up, maybe we'll see the stuff that's going on today, because I guarantee it's going on today. Guarantee it. We just need to find it. And if we keep looking into the past, we might be able to see the future better, right? Or the present at least, But uncommon belief, he sure was. So I don't know where you want to go next. We didn't touch yet on so much of the magic, but I thought what we could do is move into this next one. This one has a story, and Steve, if you're listening, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you're still here and you're listening in the chat, please feel free to chime in. Tomorrow night you can tell your story too. But I'm digging around, and I had to call Donnie, I said, Donnie, you're not going to believe this. I said, while I'm looking for information on Lindbergh and digging up, because I'm not going to just tell you, I'm going to go look in different places. And again, don't believe me, research for yourself. But I highly recommend that book and taking a new look at it, because she's got all the documents that were released and everything in it. I mean, nobody ever heard that there were medical supplies found next to this child. Medical supplies that they were using in this doctor's clinic that he was working with. I mean, never was in any of the police report, never in the trial, but it's out now. So it's about, 60, 70 years too late, 80 years too late. But, again, if they were doing it then, they're more than likely doing it now. So I'm digging around, and I decided I'm going to watch a couple ghost stories just to, take the edge off. And one of the ones I love is, I love celebrity ghost stories. I like the way they put it together. I love that they tell the story. And I love it even more when Kim Russo takes it and does the haunting of. And she goes back and she takes the story. We've talked about that before. If you haven't seen them, they're terrific. So I'm watching this one, and the first story was really good, and I'm putting my pictures, because these take a while to do these videos, and I'm sitting there on my phone, and but I can watch YouTube and do it at the same time. And this ghost story comes on, and I can't believe it. It's Tracy Nelson. Now, if you guys don't know who that is, she's an actor, and her dad was Ricky Nelson, and Ricky Nelson's mom and dad were Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. They had the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet Nelson back in the late 50s, early 60s, big show, and Ricky kind of grew up on that show. I was never a big Ricky fan. I know he has a couple songs, but I remember who he was, yeah? But I remember seeing her. She was on a thing called Square Pegs, and then she was on another one where she played a nun. I think it was Father Downing Mysteries or something. It was really good. And then she was in one movie that I really liked a lot, was Down and Out in Las Vegas. So funny. She paid the the daughter. It was a fantastic movie. I haven't seen it. Go watch it. But anyway, I recognized her, so I stopped and I listened. Right? And as I'm listening to her story, she says, well, we moved into this house and blah, blah, blah. It used to be owned by Errol Flynn. And I'm like, okay, well, a lot of, you hear a lot of that. We just did the thing with Steve on the Laurel Canyon, all the different people that moved in everybody's house and stuff. It's no big deal. And I'm still listening. She says, yeah, there was a lot of rumors about Errol Flynn, that he was a sadist and he was a Nazi. And I went, whoop, stop. Tap the brakes, pull the podcast over. Are you kidding me? So I had to dig on it. Now, I'm digging on it. I'm listening to her story, fantastic story, which I'm going to tell you because it's a ghost story and it's a good one. But she made me dig into it a little bit, and I'm like, and I read a couple things. I said, okay, well, he had a friend that might have been a Nazi sympathizer. A lot of that going on back then. Think about the times. He was in the 30s, same time as Lindbergh, okay, right before the war, during the war, after the war, all that time. And like I said, it's really easy to bump into a Nazi sympathizer, let alone bumping into Nazis we didn't even know, So.
Oh, wait. Aunt Edna just said Errol Flynn was one of my first crutches.
Robin
Hold on
Hood,
to your seat, Aunt Edna. You're about to...
Hang in there, honey.
Hang in there.
You might want to go make a sandwich. Yeah. So...
Oh boy.
So, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. So I'm digging around and I'm like, okay, well, guilt by association. I mean, I've got 1,000 pictures of people that you could dig and say, oh, she must be, I'm not into that. I want proof. I want documentation. I want more than one source, and I want to know it's solid, right? So I'm looking, and I kind of felt like, I was all prepared to come in and say, I didn't like a lot of things he did, but, Nazi, I don't know. So I was going to kind of say, got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And that's where I was going to leave it. So because everybody's worried, and work's been crazy, I texted Steve in the morning and I said, listen, I need proof of life. Everybody's asking if you're okay. How's the fever? How's everything going? And he's like, I'm having a lot of dreams. He goes, but I'm okay. And I'm feeling better. And we talked a little bit. And I said, well, you probably having nightmares, because you got fever and such, He says, I don't know. They're weird. This British guy in a tux keeps coming to me and telling me your name. And I'm like, what? I was almost late for work. I said, what do you mean, this British guy? We have not been talking all week. Little talks here and there. Are you taking your stuff? Or how you feeling? That's it. Right? So he has no idea even what we're doing this week, let alone that I'm putting together, as we're speaking, a video about Errol Flynn. Oh, here he is. Ricky Nelson lived in Errol Flynn's old mansion. Yes, that's what we're about to talk about, Steve. So he tells me he's having this dream about this guy with a British accent in a tuxedo. And I said, what? Now, I'm going to play this video, and I'm going to tell you the rest of that story. If it'll play.
I'm going to
go ahead, honey. Go ahead. Donnie's seen this video, so here we go. Hang on to your hats, folks. The Ghost and Mr. Flynn. Now, some of this I'm going to have to narrate for you, because the lady who was narrating this used a song that YouTube didn't like, so I put my own in here. I thought it fit. Look at horse ride music. There you go, Aunt Edna. Get you some of that. Look at there. On a horse. He can ride. And this is for you, Marie. My mermaid of Nottingham. It's not because of the Nottingham. I was thinking you probably like the leotards a lot, so you're welcome. There he is as a pirate. Yes, Jeeves. And here's where it started to be trouble, and I'll explain why.
Unforgettable adventures. Errol Flynn as the sky-climbing, hell-diving pilot of the U.S. Navy.
Hollywood's bad boy. With wicked, wicked ways. After a lifetime of drifting, the 32-year-old Flynn decided to build a home, and he wouldn't place it in Beverly Hills or Bel Air like other stars. Errol Flynn wanted a hideaway and bought 11.5 acres of ravine off a dangerous, dusty mountaintop road called Mulholland Drive. As workmen applied varnish to his rambling, wood-paneled home.
Okay. So this is where I had to cut off the sound, so I'll narrate it. He had a pool. It was on 11.5 acres with tennis courts and a barn and apparently a baby goat and a little puppy and a casino he had built there. Now, all this was cut out of the wilderness. He was very proud that he was the first one to have a house here, and it was very beautiful. And he called himself the master of Mulholland Farm. Now, all this is great. It goes with the whole Hollywood look, you know. All of this was probably a layout in Time magazine, for Pete's sake, you know. It had lots of lighting. Everybody went crazy over the amount of windows in the dining area and the dinner parties and how lovely it was and what an entertainer he was. Of course, he loved the ladies. In Like Flynn actually comes from him. That was something that was brought up, and they said he's in like Flynn because of the ladies. And, you know, no problem there. However, he also was extremely voyeuristic and part of a group that ran around. Some of the ladies said it was very predatory. So when he had this house built, it had all kinds of hidden staircases, okay, there was a ladies' dressing room by the pool. Well, that had a spot in it where you could go in the other room, take the cap off, and look in and watch them get undressed. He had that built into his home, okay? He also had a two-way mirror. Now, the two-way mirror was the entire ceiling of this one back bedroom. When you went up the secret steps, it took you upstairs to the attic where he had very much like a viewing thing with a landing built around it where you could look down and you could see everything going on in the bedroom. So if he was having a dinner party, he'd make bets that he could get a girl in there and do this and do that. And you could hear everybody cheering in the attic as this went on because that's what he did, and that's what they did. And he also used that for lots of practical jokes. People that didn't know about it, he'd say, well, you could go spend time with your lady in here, and then everybody would get their drinks and go upstairs and watch everything that went on. That's what this article here is about. There was no, they really didn't keep it quiet. They just put it out there, and then they'd like tone it down with something else, okay? Now, as this goes on, again, like I said, there was lots of spreads on that. There was lots of word going on about it. It was Hollywood.
An endless parade of cronies made their way to Mulholland, and so did glamorous leading ladies. Some friends, some lovers. Flynn also endured his most difficult time at Mulholland, the rape trial that almost ended his career. He left Mulholland behind in 1953. When he fled the United States and began making pictures in Europe, owing back taxes to the U.S. government, and alimony to 2 ex-wives. In 1980, Rick Nelson and family brought a rock and roll lifestyle to Mulholland for 6 more years. The platinum-selling band Nelson, founded by Rick's sons Gunnar and Matthew, was born in Errol Flynn's old upstairs bedroom. And there was another inhabitant of Mulholland Farm, a very lively ghost, experienced by many who lived in or visited the house from 1959 to 1986.
So he passed in 1959, and then we begin in the 1980s. And as I said earlier, the Nelson family, Ozzie and Harriet, had a great show. And you see Ricky here in the red shirt. Okay? And there's Ricky, probably, in his heyday. Here's Tracy. Now, Tracy Nelson is telling this story, and because it's L&M, I had to take screenshots with my phone, put them together, and learn the story so I can tell you. So you're going to have to put up with me telling the story. She tells it better. It is available on YouTube, on LMN's YouTube channel, and it was just put up 2 weeks ago, which is why it popped up and I watched it. So weird. So here's Tracy Nelson. She says that her mom and dad and her brothers bought Errol Flynn's house. She never liked it. This is what it looked like when they bought it. And of course, that's when Earl had it. And she said she had a terrible feeling walking into it. It was like, she couldn't really explain it. There was pictures of Errol Flynn all over the mantle of the fireplace, and big portraits of him all over the house. And she said that was kind of creepy for her. She hoped that her parents would change it. Well, that's when her parents got into a big thing and they broke up. So very quickly, it was just her 2 younger brothers that you saw in the beginning here, and her dad. And her dad, now think about it, he's coming toward the end. This is the 80s, so he's coming toward the very end, the tail end of being a pop rock star. He had kind of a flash in the pan kind of thing. He really only had a couple of songs, like it's a Garden Party and something else. And he kind of had his heyday, but he was just going around doing that, fading out pop star stuff, and he was getting really depressed. She didn't really elaborate on the fact that he might have had an addiction problem. I'm not saying he did, but every party he had, she did complain that there was always drugs and hangers on there, that none of them were really his friends. He was getting kind of circling the drain, you know what I mean? He was getting more and more depressed and things like that. She noticed that happening. At the same time, her career's taking off, so she's back and forth at the house. So she's leaving and gone for long periods of time and coming back and seeing the result of these things. While she was in the house, she said that she could go from room to room, and the next room would sound like it had a party going on in it. You'd walk in the room, and the sound would stop. She'd hear clinking glasses, laughter, chattering. She'd go in the room, gone, the minute you open the door. She also had a hard time sleeping because she had this room that was the biggest room that was off on the lower level, on the ground floor. She didn't want to be upstairs. She took this bedroom. Well, she was having a lot of trouble sleeping. She said she didn't understand. She was having a lot of nightmares. And she found out later on that this was the room that had the double mirror above it. And she didn't even know until they had somebody come and shut down the two-way mirror from the attic down. They didn't even know because they hadn't gone in the attic, which is weird, but you can imagine. She also found out that this room is where Errol Flynn kept his mistress, who was, at the time that he got her, she was under 15 years old. And this is the room he kept her in, and it was the one with the mirror, as said. So there's that. So she said she was probably having trouble sleeping because of that. There were other issues. There were the shower door would open and bang. Someone would scratch on the door when you were in there taking a shower and nobody would be there. Any room again, she would go in. She didn't feel like she was alone. She felt like there was parties going on. She could hear constant parties going on. And she was having other problems too. She was waking up in the middle of the night to go downstairs to see what was going on. Nobody having a party in the living room. So it was starting to get to her. This one night she has the worst nightmare. She said it was so real. It was like a lucid dream. She comes down the stairs in her dream, and around the corner comes Errol Flynn in a tuxedo. She said he was absolutely gorgeous in his tux, just like he was. He just came around with this blue light. Okay, the whole thing was bathed in like a blue light. And he just looked at her and smiled, raised his glass, and said, "Happy New Year." She said it was so weird. She did not understand why it affected her so deeply, that it woke her up in a sweat, that she was reacted like this was the worst nightmare, she ever had, because she shook her to the core. Just telling the story, you understand why it hit her so bad, because she had had so many other dreams there, and she wound up sleeping in another room. Another night, she'd have problems where she would wake up and she couldn't breathe. This is her crawling along the floor to get to the stairs. She fell down the stairs and landed on the floor because her father was having company in the kitchen, just trying to scream his name because she could not breathe. Finally, he came in and they revived her, and it went away as fast as it came on. But she had that a lot, very much like a waking sleep paralysis, a lot of weight, and you can't breathe, like you're being choked. Again, in this room where so many things went on during the heyday of that house. Okay, the next thing is, again, the sounds of different things going on in the rooms in that house was just one thing that made her crazy. This was another. It would sound like somebody was in her dad's studio, music studio, breaking guitars, breaking glass, throwing furniture. She waited in their closet here till the sound went over. She thought it was burglars. So she locked herself in the closet and stayed there for almost an hour past the sound so it would stop. And she goes in the room, flicks on the light, and of course, nothing there. Nothing was broken. This stuff really made her nuts, okay? And I can imagine. The worst part, she said, was that now, again, she's got a job. She's doing, recording and stuff. So she leaves to go on location, comes back, and now the brothers are off on the road because they got gigs going. They had the little blonde twin guys. They were off doing stuff. Dad's alone. Dad's got addiction, alcohol issues. Okay? He's getting depressed. She's noticing that the house isn't being kept up. The lawn isn't being cut. The screens are hanging off the windows. And he seems to be declining in the same rate. She said it was so weird that it was like the house is falling apart or dad's falling apart. He's hanging around in his robe. She's like, is something going on in this house that's influencing him? And I kind of put this here, like, could be a whole group of people hanging out there influencing him, right? He's just a recluse. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He doesn't want to leave. And he starts to get this obsession. And she says that he was never for flying, ever. He always told everybody, don't fly, drive. He made a big thing out of it because so many people had died in plane crashes, right, Donnie? I mean, a Big Bopper and all that stuff. So many. And he said, you never get in a plane. Well, she comes back, and he's obsessed with planes. He wanted to buy this little prop plane with the propellers. I don't know that much about planes, but it was very much like these little charter flights that you get, okay? He's getting models, and he's obsessive with it. He's painting it, making it sure that every little bit is just right. And I mean, for weeks he would do this. Very much, I told Donnie, like the potato scene in, the Third Kind. What is it? Contact of the Third Kind. What's the
Close
name
Encounters
of that?
of the
Close
Third Kind?
Encounters. Yeah, very much like the potato scene there. She said it was so weird. So he's doing all this with the planes and the models, and they're all over the living room. He's not changing his clothes, in his pajamas. She's got to go back to work. She goes back to work. She doesn't want to leave him, so she's checking on him. And what does he do? He goes out and he buys a plane, and it bursts into flames and kills him, his girlfriend, and 5 members of the band. And what night did it go down? On New Year's Eve. On New Year's Eve. Happy New Year. Then the house burnt down. Explain that to me. She said that it was very much like the house and her dad were declining at the same rate. It sounded so much to me, Donnie, like The Shining. That big mansion hotel up on the mountain, all secluded by itself. The dad being an alcoholic author who had tendencies of being, abusive and crazy. And the decline of that character in The Shining, and how all these parties and this debauchery and this shit that went on in this house, I think almost made some kind of energy, a black ball of energy that just attacked. And the fact that he came to her in her dreams and warned her, Happy New Year, she said herself that she thought that because she came in and she hated that house, she hated the pictures of Flynn, she was constantly arguing about it and how they should make it more modern and take it down and be themselves in that house, make it a home. She thinks the house and Flynn went against her and took over her dad and had something to do with the plane bursting into flames. And I'd love to get more information on that. That's all I know on it. I don't know what was mechanically wrong with the plane. I have no clue. But that was trippy. And then Steve is telling me that he's getting somebody coming in her dreams saying my name. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe Flynn, because Steve gets dreams, he gets that. Sometimes people contact him that way, and I'm thinking, okay, is he telling me don't dig? Don't put this story out? Do you see what I'm saying? Is that what's going down there? And then I started digging. And when I was digging, again, like I said, I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Just because you're hanging with somebody who might be a Nazi sympathizer doesn't mean he's a Nazi. You can't just pin people like that. Well, guess what? He was about 24, and he met a guy, I wrote down his name, I can't remember it now because I didn't bring my pad with me, but they basically went as war correspondents to Spain, during the war. And this guy he was with was absolutely taking pictures of everything that was going on, and he was selling them to the Nazis. Flynn went through all that, and of course played up the whole fact that he was, a war correspondent, and he was a journalist, sending back information back and forth, and that helped his fame and everything, and Hollywood was against it, and we got to stop. He actually got wounded, and he said, this is going to be bad, you got to pull out of there, we don't want you hurt, you're a commodity.
Did you see what Steve just said?
What did Steve say? Journey through the gate. In the dream, he said you were one of his favorite people to listen to. Well, I hope he's listening tonight. I don't know how to take that. You know what I'm saying? So, as far as if it was him warning, and I'm actually sitting here thinking, okay, he's dead in 59. I think differently, I guess, than other people. 59, I'm like, if he crossed over, he should be through all of his stuff. He would have had to deal with all the pain he caused and all the, if any of that was true with the rapes and the children and, and not only that, he was one of those psychopaths that were thrown out of schools for torturing animals. So he had the signs from a young age. That's why he got thrown out of a lot of schools. And I don't even want to bring up the stuff because, I don't touch that. Once you hurt animals, I'm done with you. I don't care how good looking you are in a tuxedo. You better enjoy that martini because it's the last one you're getting. I found out you hurt an animal. So that's how I feel about that. But it made me dig. And this son of a bitch I'm going to tell you right now. That's why I put in the whole thing where he was a gunner in the airplanes. He worked with Hollywood to shoot those scenes over a naval base, our naval bases. They got that information to the Japanese. And yes, they used that information for Pearl Harbor. So there you go. I have a little something here. I have lots of cutouts, but I figured I would choose this one. This is Nick Redfern. It was put out 2019, June 2nd of 2019. Under the terms of the U.S. Freedom of Information Act, numerous files have been declassified that tell of how and why the FBI, decades ago, secretly and carefully kept their eyes and ears on the rich and famous. One of those was the legendary Hollywood swashbuckler of the 1930s to the 1950s, Errol Flynn, who was suspected of being nothing less than a full-blown Nazi spy. Flynn biographer Charles Higman said, "I spoke to Colonel William E. Williamson, former director of demilitarization procedures in Japan under General Douglas MacArthur. Williamson had done his own research at the Pentagon and State Department in the CIA and had learned that Earl was a spy for the Nazis on a major scale. Also, nightclub owner and friend of Flynn's, Johnny Meyer, told Higman, "I believe Earl was not merely in touch with the Nazis in San Francisco, but was actually aiding and abetting them, and the alleged links do not end there. It's a matter of official record that one of Flynn's girlfriends was Gertrude Anderson, a Nazi sympathizer and Swedish singer." And blah, 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 all the trysts with Nazi, like I said, there was a lot of that going on at the time. But here we get into the meat and potatoes. Lots of different things of him doing it. But let me see. Right here. Okay. In 1932, went via the Far East to New Guinea on another scientific expedition which was financed by himself. On this trip he met the film star Errol Flynn and became a very close friend of same. In 1937, Urban, which is the guy he went to Spain with, that's the one everybody says, oh, guilt by association. Bullshit. Returned from South America, and in the same year, he and his friend Errol Flynn embarked to New York for London and went via Paris. Being in London, Urban volunteered with the British Ambulance Unit, which was committed for the Loyalists in Spain. Errol Flynn also went as a journalist and unofficial observer to Spain. After 20 days in Spain, subject went to Vienna, and from there to Canton, China. This is all CIA documents and FBI documents on him. This is all stuff that's been released. And it also said that at one point in time, let me get this picture. Please forgive me for this, but the video on this one didn't work. And I have it right here. Screenshots. Bear with me. In doing the research, one discovers that not only... Oh, wait a minute. That was von Braun. Hang on. Here's another one. Son of a bitch. All right, one minute. Here it is. There is no doubt whatsoever that Flynn had Nazi sympathies and worked as a Nazi operative, if not an actual agent. He was first noticed for his violently anti-British and pro-Nazi views as early as 1934, and there is little doubt his work for the Nazis resulting in people being killed. Like I said, they snuck in doing that movie and got all the naval bases, lots of different pictures, like reconnaissance, right? Pictures and everything else. Sent it to the Japanese. They used the information to see what we had in what port and where, and he was part of that. So he looked good on a horse.
Let me take care of this cat real quick.
Go ahead. He looked good on a horse, but oh my God. And I'm wondering how many people we dig into, we're going to come up with stuff like this. You know what I mean? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you can't really look past it. You had me and he was hurting animals. I'm done. But then the kids, the room, the voyeurs, being a womanizer is one thing. Most of the women that get involved with womanizers, they know it. They cry and they complain. And they know it getting in. Ben Franklin was the same way, and he said it. I'm just making as many women happy as I can. Women do it too. That's fine. That's your own business. But when you're selling information and you're getting people killed and military, Donnie, what do you got to say about that one? That blows your mind.
So to sum up, this guy was a perv, a Nazi, pedophile, and a traitor. Yeah.
And an animal herder.
And he tortured animals.
Yep.
And you know what? He probably wasn't a very good tipper either.
And he probably had something to do with Tracy Nelson getting choked and thrown down the stairs several times. I don't know what she would say now.
That's just an awful human being.
Yeah. So that's just another one. And I mean, I'm not here to bust anybody. I would have never guessed. I know a lot of these people. I'm all about, I know that Rock Hudson was gay and they tried to hide it. And I feel so sorry for him. It's like, why can't you just be yourself? Why do people have to make people be something else? He wasn't hurting anybody. He just wanted to be happy. Nobody should have to, to hide like that and not be, not have a life. But when you're doing stuff like that, it's one thing to go with willing females that are drunk and maybe had a little too much to drink. I mean, we've all been there. But this kind of stuff, I mean, that's just what we know. And that's just what I uncovered in a couple days. And on top of that, I sat here for 2 days and thought about, should I put that out there? Should I talk about it? I mean, if he's coming in Steve's dreams, I mean, he wasn't saying tell her not to do the video, but it still freaked me out because here's Tracy he's in the dreams. I'm thinking maybe that's his skill, that maybe that's what, ghosts have different things. If he didn't cross over, he could be doing this stuff. So I'm thinking, I'm doing it anyway. So I put the sage and I put the, the Florida water and I told the truth. And there it is. So be it. There it is.
And he was a hero to a lot of people because a lot of his roles, he was the leading man, the protagonist, the hero guy.
Yeah, he was, They all were. They all had something that took us away, and it's just so sad that we can look at this stuff, and now we've got to look at it differently, I mean, so many things over the past couple of years have been ruined for me, too, but I'd rather know the truth, I'm sure anybody would, but there's that. I mean, that's just trippy to me. Now, here's the caveat for tonight. You can ask anybody, and you can ask Donnie. That little video right there, I had to try loading that thing. It took me 9 times to get it on YouTube. YouTube wouldn't take it. It's just weird. It just would load halfway and then not come back. Every single video I did here, I did on the same equipment. That one wouldn't load. Finally got it loaded, got everything up here, everything played. That's the only one that wouldn't play. And I had to load it 4 times. I told Laura, I'm going to just have to do it from memory because I can't get the video to play. And then the last minute it started playing. So tonight, I think we wrestled Errol Flynn and we may have won. And I'm speaking for all of the girls and little boys and animals and people who were scorned by him, because I know he had a lot of people that stuck up for him, that believed in him. Olivia de Havilland, his co-star in Robin Hood, one of the last interviews she did, she said there's no truth to any of this about Errol Flynn. He was a wonderful man, and a lot of people were fooled, even the ones that knew him, and that maybe you just look at everybody a little different now and think, what's behind those eyes? There you go.
Yeah.
So there's that. What do you want to hit next?
Well, what's the next slide? Where are we going?
Do you want to... Let's do something... the last dark thing... well, it's all dark. We're trying real hard not to keep it dark. But I found a lovely woman, and I really want to share her with you. Her name is Annie Jacobson. Now, Annie Jacobson is right up our alley, and I gotta say, Donnie, out of the people who are living today that I'm thinking on the top of my head, she's got to be one of the top 3 people I would love to get on this show. Dan Aykroyd's another one, but I just love to pick her brain. But I think she's wonderful. I think she's brilliant. I think the way she goes after this is just, it's just, she's ravenous about it. And she's so well-spoken and intelligent, and I just had to find a way to share her with you tonight. So what I did was I recorded a bookstore interview she did for her book, Operation Paperclip. And I cut a couple of pictures around to try to make a little video for you to see, because I really wanted to share what she had to say. So without further ado, Annie Jacobson, who I adore, If Uncommon Belief would drop the link to her website, the books she's written, right up our alley, guys, and absolutely fantastic. So here she is.
1600.
Oh, wait a minute.
German
Let me start that again.
scientists who came
Sorry.
to
Hang on 1 second. Let me start that at the beginning, if I can. There she is. Isn't she beautiful? My God. All right, here we go. Inside and out. Intelligent as all get out.
To start with, my book, Operation Paperclip. These gentlemen are 21 of approximately 1,600 German scientists who came to America to work for the U.S. military and intelligence agencies after the war. I focus on these men because I found them to be particularly unique and interesting and somewhat nefarious on varying degrees. And I think it's important to also realize that whenever you're reporting a story like this, it's about riding on the heels of many important journalists and historians who have come before. So while I do bring lots of new information to the table, academics also have been involved in unearthing this story over the decades. But I think now there's really a light cast on Operation Paperclip that has not been shown before. The story for me began when I was reporting this book, Area 51, and when I was working on that, I came across these two Nazi aircraft designers named Walter and Reimar Horton, and they were working on this aircraft, which looks a lot like the B-2 bomber. So you can immediately see that, you know, Hitler's weapons were very interesting to the Allies during the war and immediately after. I found out when I was researching the Horton brothers that he had a boss. And when he was at the Luftwaffe, he worked for Hermann Göring, and there's Göring with Hitler. The Luftwaffe was the German Air Force. But in between the Horton brothers and Hermann Göring was this guy. And this is Siegfried Kneemeyer. Colonel Siegfried Kneemeyer. And during the war, he was one of the Reich's top 10 pilots. He flew on spy missions over Norway to decide which was the best places to bomb. And it becomes apparent that the Third Reich is crumbling. And so stashes begin to happen. And this is a very famous photograph of a huge trove of money that was found in a cave, but also across the Third Reich, military intelligence officers begin stashing weaponry and, more importantly, documents related to how those weapons are built. So suddenly Alsace is on the move, and they're looking for weapons, they're looking for documents, and they're looking for scientists. If you see this little innocuous-looking tunnel up there, that's an example of one of the slave labor facilities that the slaves that Himmler was organizing and shipping off to the various scientific and weaponry departments. This up here is Nordhausen, and this becomes very important to the rocket program because this is where the V-2 rockets are being built. And if you see here on the bottom here, this is inside of that cave, and entire trains could go in, and they, as I write in the book, rocket parts would go in, and full rockets and bodies would come out because the laborers were worked to death. So the scientists are rounded up and they're sent here to Castle Kranberg. Now the war is at its end. So we're now moving into May of 1945, and the military is in charge of this castle, and it's called Dustbin as a nickname. And the scientists are set up there and they begin to be interrogated.
These are Annie's words from another interview that she did about her book, Operation Paperclip. Isn't she brilliant? She's just brilliant. He is a great example This is about Werner von Braun, by the way, as you see in this picture, as he's standing with SS, by the way. He is a great example because you wonder where the deal with the devil really happened in terms of his whitewashed past. Because the U.S. government, NASA in particular, one second. Was so complicit in keeping his past hidden. Not only was von Braun a Nazi, but a member of the SS, and not only was he running the underground slave labor facility where his rockets were being built, he wasn't running the facility, but he was in charge of the science there. Werner von Braun himself traveled nearby to the Buchenwald concentration camp where he handpicked slaves to work for him as laborers. What he saw and what he knew, it's impossible to excuse him from his Nazi past. They had all different trajectories, but none of them seem to have been held accountable for what happened and what they were involved in during the war. Here's this other goofball. Look who he's sitting with, Johnson and Kennedy. You see that? Situation room. Here's another shocker. Who's that? Who's that? Yeah, get out of there, Mickey. Get out quick. Your daddy's a Nazi. And we love you for bringing it out, Annie Jacobson. Better hide, Mickey. Look out, Goofy. So long, suckers. We ain't buying your shit anymore. What do you think about that, Donnie?
Yeah, Walt Disney. Whew,
yeah, I know you want to get into that one.
That's a loaded one.
Not only did I knock Errol Flynn off his horse, but von Braun, and I'm a little sticky on this one because I was stationed at Redstone Arsenal. Right outside of Redstone Arsenal is the von Braun Civic Center and the Space and Rocket Center that bears his name. He had the little gold badge right here, which is Hitler's elite. And they told us and told us and told us back in the day, these are the good Nazis. These are the good Germans. These are the good Germans. And Donnie wanted to bring up a little something. You want to do the scar, Donnie? I didn't have it. The video wouldn't play on this one. But if you would be so kind to explain this coming up. The Mensur scars.
Wait, I don't know this one.
Okay.
I'm not
it's okay.
knowledgeable enough to explain it.
This is the one where they would fence, and they intentionally tried to create these scars as a badge of honor. Okay. And it was the very elite and the higher up in the SS that would have them. Yeah. And as you see here, a German student wrote this. I'm sorry,
it's a pretty extreme form of hazing, if you ask me.
Yeah, and it's going to start again. I'm sorry, guys. This is the only way I can play this for you, but you get to see it. This is Otto Skorzynski. He was Hitler's favorite Nazi commando who famously rescued Mussolini from the Italian hilltop forest. Many people in World War II would hear about this, but he has the Mensur scar, and all the Mensur means is bragging scar. Mm-hmm. This is something they would go through. This is what they would wear. You could see the blood running down. This is a German student wrote this, and it says hero. Notice the scars. And here is Johnson sitting in the Situation Room with Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And here is not Goebbels, it's something else. I can't remember his name. I didn't want to remember it. But they still give out an award in his name. And Annie Jacobson asked them, why would you give out an award from this man? He has killed millions of people. Mm-hmm. He was right there with it. He's not one of the good Germans. He's a bad, bad man. Why would you give out? He said, nobody's ever asked me that before. People just complicit. They just go along with this. They say, okay, they said that they were good Germans, and that's why we're bringing them over here. And, in the past 3 weeks, Donnie, we've been having conversations with people around us, and I know you've had a couple, and I've certainly had some, and, things like, the Tuskegee Airmen experiments, and, that, we were experimenting on a race of people with syphilis. The Tuskegee Airmen, heroes. You know, there's nothing like the squadron of Tuskegee Airmen. I mean, it's amazing heroes, and we did that to him. We did that. So don't ever tell yourself that a government wouldn't do something to their own people. And if you believe that, you've got to go back and look at the whole history of AIDS and the shots, and go look up something called Hep B shots and what was in them. People going to get Hep B shots so they could stay alive during this AIDS epidemic, and they were actually giving them AIDS. So I want you to think about this, because it's not just the past. The same tactics that they used then to fool us then, they're using now. And I know some of you agree with me. At least just look at it. That's all I'm asking. You can disagree. So yes, there has been many cultures and many things, but I honestly believe nothing like Mussolini and the Nazis and Hitler and the things that they did. And if von Braun went down there and handpicked people that were being held against their will to work in these death camps, to make these rockets, and then we went and got him and knew about it, whitewashed his past, put him in charge of NASA basically, gave him a Space and Rocket Center, named a bunch of things after him, and then propped him up, gave him
Got
a house,
awards from the
money,
president.
Yeah, money, house. His kids are standing there all proud of him. You know, people ask me, well, what are we supposed to do? Russia took some. We had the Soviet Union. It was a direct
we talked
threat.
about this, right?
Yeah, we did, honey.
Apologists would say, well, the Russians had their Nazi scientists and they were advancing technologically. It was America's job to keep up because of the Cold War was heating up, and we need to make sure we could compete. That would always be the through line, right? Like that's how
For the
people
greater
make
good.
excuses. Yeah,
For the greater good.
We got to beat those guys.
Exactly.
just have to beat
And the
those
Soviet
guys.
Union was coming, and you could think about it. You know, it's like they were going to get theirs. That's why they put them in that castle, so they could go see who was who and who did they need and to put where. You know, if we, honest to God, needed people to do that, this would be my deal. Listen to me, you Nazi son of a bitch. Okay? Because I'll tell you, I got some inside information on this. I used to live next door. I lived about 6 years next door to a sergeant. He used to come over and sit and talk to me all the time. And he was actually a translator at the Nuremberg trials. The witnesses that came forward, the survivors that lived through these horrible experiments and somehow still managed to get on their feet, put on a suit and show up with dignity in this court. And most of the people weren't even hung. They slid them out the back. There were some. I've seen the unmarked graves where all the hanged people were, but some were on death row and they went right in and they got them. If you want to hear more about it, I highly recommend Annie Jacobson. There's multiple interviews. There's a good one with her and Joe Rogan. There's some other ones. I really like the book where she's in a bookshop and she's talking, because she just goes through her stuff without have anybody interrupted. It's wonderful. I highly recommend that. If you can, mods, drop her link of Annie Jacobson and her books. She's got one on the Pentagon, she's got one on DARPA, and multiple ones on the war. She's got about, I don't know, about 20 books out, and they're all fascinating. But there's that. Me, if you're asking me, I'm going to take the stance that I hear Kennedy took on the North Woods. If you guys don't know about North Woods, it's probably the only reason I really like Kennedy. I don't like anything else about Kennedy but this one thing. I really think he was trying to do some things. Poor son of a bitch thought he was president. I get what he was trying to do, but his personal life was a little creaky for me. But when the generals came to him, now this is his staff of consultants, and this is they sit there and they work out plans and then they present it to him, and all the generals signed off on Northwoods. They were going to take a personal jet, passenger jet, and shoot it down and blame it on the Russians, so that they would have a reason to jump into war with Cuba. With Cuba. I'm sorry, I said Russians. I meant Cuba. False flag, exactly. And he read all that, and he stood there, and from the transcripts, he says, these are Americans we're going to kill. Well, there's 250 of them, but we're saving so many, so, it's expendable, right? And he says, he threw it down on the desk. He says, we don't do that. Well, we do that. He didn't want to do that. That's one reason I stick with that. Yeah. Now, on the other flip side, we do that. We could do better. We could have gone in there. We could have got them all and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put them all in Gitmo. We're going to put them all in a prison. If they want to help us, we'll send our engineers down there. They can either live the rest of their life silent and solitary confinement, or they can come out here and they could work with us. We didn't need to give them money. We didn't even give them bank accounts. We didn't need to give them a hero status. We sure as hell didn't need to give them houses and land and buildings and statues and awards in their name. That's what we didn't need to do. That's my opinion.
What I just kind of realized was kind of ironic. People always wonder, like, how did Hitler get elected to become Chancellor of Germany? How did he get control of the country all of a sudden?
He's a good orator.
You have to keep in mind the main reason why the Nazi party gained political power wasn't because at first they were anti-Semitic. It was because their main enemy were the communists, and people saw them as the protectors from communism. That's why they elected Hitler to be their leader, because they were so afraid of communism, and we had got to fight Bolshevism. So in fact, we got to get this communism problem out of here. It's the Nazis who are going to do it for us. And then he gets into power. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I hate Jews. It's kind of ironic because when you think about the Operation Paperclip situation, the justification for taking in all these Nazi scientists, what was the reason again? Because we got to fight communism. Mm-hmm.
All of it is national security. It's this, it's that. It's human beings. Every human being has the right, inalienable rights. Given by your Creator. Plain and simple. I don't care what your religion. I don't care. You're born. You have the right to breathe air. You have the right to live. You have the right to be given every chance to live. Not because, this or that, or it's not the right time for the parent, or it's not this. It's just like to live. It's a soul, Mm-hmm. And to think that what you want to achieve, you can destroy living things to get there. That's just a place, I'm not willing to go. I mean, you come on and you attack mine, and it's like right to protect yourself and things like that, or you're hurting something that can't fight for themselves. I'm there, But until then, your rights, my rights, both should coincide. But this was ridiculous, and I'm getting really sick and hearing people say, okay, well, we had, no, it didn't have to be done like that. Yeah. They could have said, these are some really bad dudes, and they've done a lot of really bad things. And on Saturdays, we're going to let everybody that they hurt or knew somebody that they hurt come and throw tomatoes at them and spit on them if you want to, or pound on the glass. But you're not going to get a reaction at them because they're psychopaths. They're never going to feel your pain. Never going to feel your pain. In fact, they're going to enjoy it. So it's best just to go on and live and let that be your revenge. I'm living on, and I'm going to be a decent person, like that whole, Saving Private Ryan thing. Make it worth it, live on in the memory. I can look back and tell you Trail of Tears. If those people didn't push on, we wouldn't be here, survive and hope, all those things. But this doesn't make sense to me. There is no justification for this. There really isn't. These people should have been punished. They should have been, that's it. When they asked Annie Jacobson, she was sitting with a survivor of Auschwitz, and she said, what matters to you? What out of all this, what needs to be remembered? And he just reached down and he pulled up his sleeve and he showed his tattoo, and he goes, that right there matters. Yeah. That needs to be remembered. And tonight, we're remembering. So there's that. Blue Crossroad, if you believe it, just look at Canada for... I'm sorry, I missed that. I think somebody's having a conversation. If I miss this, I'm sorry, guys. I'm really trying to pay attention to what I'm saying. It's a lot of deep convo, and I apologize for missing these chats. It's not on purpose, I promise. Yeah, he is a bad dude, Patriot. I think you're talking about von Braun. And I think Laura said I was going to get my channel pulled. Well, you know what? If we go down in flames. How about if they like that, wait till they get a load of this. If you're wanting to know, what were the people then thinking? here we go. We're coming out of the war. Most people were getting, what was coming out of the war. They knew before we got involved what was going on.
Yeah.
Personally, I love the people who said, well, when America heard what was going on, over in Germany, we jumped right in. No, I'm sorry. No, we didn't. We actually funded both sides of that. We're actually funding Hitler before the war ever started. And you really got to dig in to really, understand some of this stuff, because it's going to boggle your mind. It's really going to boggle your mind. But I think they got a little out of hand, and it got a little scary, and we jumped in. Of course, we've got the information. I don't even want to talk about Pearl Harbor right now, but that's a whole nother show. And we've got all this other stuff. So what were the people thinking then? Well, we showed you the scars. And we showed you that they were saying, okay, these are the good Germans. These are the guys who didn't really want to do anything, and they were just going along to get along, and they had to do it. They were just doing their job, and, all the other stuff.
Ball.
They played ball.
Yeah.
And, some of them really dug it, though. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in the higher ups. A lot of the people we showed you were very high up and moved high up in our government and had a lot of control. And that makes no sense to me. Why would you fight an enemy and then bring him and put him right inside the workings of your government and your country? It makes zero sense to me. But this is the kind of stuff that was going on. Everybody knows George Carlin. And George Carlin would get up there and he'd do his stick, and he would tell, he was a satirist, but he would tell the truth, right? And I think now we can look back and say how much truth he was really talking. Well, in his day, this young gentleman was very much like a George Carlin, and I just thought you guys would enjoy this. This is what was going on in 1967 in the feel of, were they good Germans? There's a funny American genius. He wrote this tune, and he called it Werner von Braun. Enjoy.
Gather round while I sing you of Werner von Braun, a man whose allegiance is ruled by expedience. Call him a Nazi, he won't even frown. Nazi schmazi, says Werner von Braun. Don't say that he's hypocritical, say rather that he's apolitical. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Werner von Braun. Some have harsh words for this man of renown, but some think our attitude should be one of gratitude, like the widows and cripples in old London town, who owe their large pensions to Werner von Braun. You too may be a big hero once you've learned to count backwards to zero. In German or English, I know how to count down. And I'm learning Chinese, says Werner von Braun.
Cisco, I think you're muted.
There we go.
There you go.
I mean, that was the attitude then, right? He says the rockets go up. It's not my point. It's not my department where they come down. He doesn't care who he's working for, supposedly. And he's learning Chinese. And that's the thing. If the Chinese had come over here and got him, he'd have gone over there and done it for them. Mm-hmm. And it's just that feeling of everybody laughing and, joking about it. They knew. People knew, and they allowed it to happen. And I don't know what we could have done different, Donnie. I really don't.
It boils down to a question of justice versus victory. Do you sacrifice justice for victory, or do you sacrifice victory for justice?
Right.
That's a question that every society and civilization has to face at some point in their histories.
Absolutely. And I mean, like we said, we could dig in anything. Blue was saying here, we didn't want to get involved in the war. It's true. But if you follow the money, you follow the big banks, and you follow, the history there, we'll get into it. about how it was being funded, a lot of the steel and oil and all this other stuff, because people really dug Hitler when he was first coming up. He was a great orator. I mean, it's hard to understand because it's in German, but you can see.
You can tell just by his body language.
Yeah, and how he spoke and everything.
Yeah.
It was very much, we can look at a lot of people that are like that are trained to do these things, that have a charisma of a certain kind, but. The guy was not what you predict either. I mean, he was sickly and he had a lot of horrible, body things going on. I mean, this guy was just a mess. How girls were, I just don't even know. And, the painting was, he did this painting. That's when he first started out as an artist, and he used all these different things rolled up into one. But then again, he was also a guy who I believe, and Donnie and I will get into this in the round table, but I also believe that he didn't die in the bunker. I think that was somebody else. And I know everybody thinks it's conspiracy theorists and all this other stuff, but I've got more evidence leaning for the fact that he and so many of the elite SS escaped to Argentina. And I think Eva Braun took the cyanide and died. I stood right in front of a footstool that came out of the bunker, had blood sprayed on it, and I was standing right in front of it, and I told my son, I said, I'm not picking up that that's him. I don't think he's dead. Somebody died. Don't think it's him. So Donnie and I were digging into Argentina a lot. There's a lot of evidence there, artifacts found, bunkers found, whole towns that speak nothing but German. The Germans that are there now that'll still hush about the stuff that went on. So many different things, and we'll bring that up, down the line. Donnie, did you want to say anything about that, Argentina?
Well, I guess I'll go into a little bit of what the official story of Hitler's death is. So when Hitler's bunker was raided, Berlin fell to the Russians. Basically, it was Russians coming in from the east, the Allies coming in from the west, right? And it was basically a done deal at that point for Hitler and his Nazis. Russia overtakes Berlin first. They get there first. The dust is settled. They've got the bunker. Allied soldiers show up, which is, funny to think about. Probably the first and only time in our modern history that a U.S. soldier and a Russian soldier have ever high-fived in the battlefield.
There you go. Nice.
So the Allied
probably
forces
happen again.
So yeah, but the point is the Allied forces were a bit late to the party. So when they show up, they're like, okay, so what happened to Hitler? Russian forces are like, yeah, he took cyanide, killed himself with his wife. They're like, okay, where's the body? They're like, yeah, we just incinerated it and threw the ashes into a river. They're like, what?
Yeah.
And the Russians are like, don't worry about it. Just take our word for it. Here's a suicide note. See?
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Not too long after, they sent the head of British intelligence. I forgot his name, but the British intelligence officer gets sent over to the Kremlin to investigate further to see what kind of any remains of Hitler's body or any evidence of Hitler's suicide that he could find. He comes back like a few weeks later and he's like, yeah, these Russians have been jerking my chain the whole time. And so they're like, what do you think happened to Hitler? He's like, I don't know. But I mean, they just said, oh, we just randomly cremated the body and just threw in the river. Just believe us, we're just Stalinist communists. We're honest. And then everyone is like, yeah, we'll take your word for it, Russians. You're so trustworthy.
Yeah.
It's not like they're sending us bots to advertise porn in the chats or anything.
Right. Yeah. And they were just so into gathering everybody because it was almost like, like in any war, officers are always treated different, wounded, they go to different places, officers are treated different. I think there was something like that going on, but they knew they were stashing, like Annie said. You saw that one picture. That was one place, where they were stashing. That was money in all those duffel bags and stuff. There was stashes of weapons and how those weapons were made. All of that stuff. They didn't destroy it. They stashed it. And, there's multiple movies of going back to collect art that was stolen from the people that they basically rounded up. And I don't want to say it was just the Jewish people, because it wasn't. It was gypsies, it was Romanians, it was people of color. There was people that had a different way of life.
Basically anyone who wasn't of the Aryan race.
Right, disabled, you retarded, people with emphysema, just any kind of tick, I mean, you have to imagine how many times this happened. I tell this story often, and it's basically some people are sitting down to dinner in their humble little home, and all of a sudden the door is kicked in, and people in uniforms with weapons rush in, and they're speaking a foreign language, and they're knocking stuff over, and they're pointing, and they're hitting, and they're banging, and they're somehow getting across the fact that you're leaving your situation, and you can just grab one or two things because you don't know where you're going, who's taking you, or why. You just know there's a scrambling. You're a mother, and you're grabbing up your children, and you're grabbing whatever you have to cook, or their food, or whatever you can grab, and you're just forced out of the house. The next thing you know, you go out and you see other people that look like you, and they're disheveled and crying and upset and as weary looking as you are beginning to look. And you find out that you're getting in this line, and now you're walking. Well, the older person, let's just say the grandfather of the family, is walking, and the father of the family is trying to keep everybody together, and he's trying to move his elder father along, and the elder father keeps stopping and saying, "Thank you, God, thank you, thank you, God, thank you." And he's like, "Come on, Dad, you gotta go, you gotta go." And there's all this yelling and screaming, and people getting hit with butts of rifles and kicked and all kinds of things. Just a bustle going around, and this man just has this mindset about him. And it continues to go on for miles. Finally, the son asks him, when they have a moment to sit, he goes, "Father, why do you keep saying this prayer? Thank him for what? Look at us." And he said, "For making me not like them." Now, I didn't say a nationality of the family. I didn't say an army of what soldiers, because you could take that and you could make that this situation, you could take it and you can make it the Trail of Tears. 580 miles forced march. Out of your home, you have no idea where you're going, dying people along the way, not even allowing you to bury them. You could name it the Chinese slaves that came and built the railroads in San Francisco, and on and on and on. The Scottish against England. I mean, you can just name it. The story has gone on and on and on and on. My point is, when does it stop? When do we start treating each other like humans? Your rights, my rights. When do we start caring for each other and care for each other's children? I remember when I was growing up, everybody in the neighborhood knew you. I'm going to tell your mother, and they knew where your mother was, and they probably made you a sandwich, and they probably whooped your butt if you talked back. We cared about each other. But that kind of living was going on when this was going on. Yeah. 1967. They're telling jokes on late night TV about a Nazi who's running our space program.
Who, by the way, would have the slowest workers executed like every workday. That's why he was always needing new workers.
Yes, yes.
I mean,
in the morning, when you went in, the 5 slowest workers from the day before would be hanging at the entrance when you went in.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be slow on Werner von Braun's rocket factory. And this guy got monuments and probably the Nobel Peace Prize, I guarantee.
Awards from the president. I saw this thing where it was President Ford, I think it was, Gerald Ford, who was giving him the award for just being a great American.
Gerald Ford. Jeez, great American.
And I showed you that picture of that plaque in Huntsville, Alabama, and I was like, "Oh, Cisco, that's your neck of the woods." So I don't know, let me ask you, whenever you walk
by it
past
every day. I drove by it every day, and I'll tell you
think?
something. You can ask my boys. I guarantee you they were probably, 6 and 5, and I'd say, "You see that? He was a Nazi." And I'll tell you all about it. They knew about, where I first heard the words Operation Paperclip? From my 6-year-old son who was listening to Coast and Art Bell. That's where I first heard really what it was about. I mean, I heard the name, but I really didn't dig in it. I knew there was Nazis that came over, but then I started understanding all the different sections and the programs and things. So, yeah, I mean, it's a trip. We can learn a lot from our kids, but I'll tell you something, our kids learn a lot from us. And the number one thing they learn from us, pick up the fastest, is hate. And, you know, if you can pick up hate, you can pick up love. Honey, I think out of vids, you have something here I wanted you to be able to touch on, too. I know we're running, we're way past. We're like 2 hours, 20 minutes. We knew it was going to be a lot to pack into the show.
Oh, we gotta make up for lost time. You know,
yeah, but we also don't want to leave without, you had two stories here, and we want to leave everybody on a happy note, and I know which one you want to have for last, but I'd love to touch on this weirdo here, if we don't mind.
Yeah.
Because he's a trip. Well, you know, I'm not going to say he's weird. He was probably had something going on, and I'm not against this stuff. But it's the way they went to extremes with stuff. Because I believe that, like Jim Mars was saying, that this was the beginning of MK Ultra. This was also, I think, the beginning of the Men Who Stare at Goats. That whole program, the whole thing about. This was just the beginning of, they also started to experiment on the twins and the mind, ESP. They were very into all that. What would you like to say about this, Donnie?
Okay. Oh boy, this guy. He was probably one of the most wickedest dudes in all of the Nazi. Well, he wasn't even technically in the Nazi party, but he had a big relationship with them. His name was Erich Jan Hanussen. He was famous. He was one of the biggest celebrities in Germany at the time, one of the wealthiest entertainers. And his thing was that he was a psychic, mystic, and a stage magician.
Okay.
My best way to put it, try to imagine David Blaine, Zach Baggins, and Kanye West in one package. That's
oh my God.
Guy. So he would do like illusions, but he would also do like psychic readings and astrology. Like like you look at a lot of stage magicians, they're not really into occult or paranormal stuff because they kind of separate that, like Penn and Teller, people like that, Houdini. But this guy was both. So he was one of the wealthiest entertainers, sold out shows every night, right? He'd be doing things like, he'd be doing like a card trick, and then he'd turn to a guy in the front row and be like, oh, by the way, sir, your wife's cheating on you. And then he would just go back to the card trick.
Fun to have at parties.
He wound up making so much money from his career that he built his own palace, and it was called the Palace of the Occult. And basically it was this giant mansion where it was like in one room you would have like seances, right? In another room it would just be like card tricks. Another room would be like Ouija boards, and then another part would be this museum of like haunted items and artifacts and cursed things, like just all this creepy stuff, right? Like
sounds like a Friday night, man.
Yeah. And so it was a mix of both. And then basically in his mansion the German elite would come because he was like everyone wanted to be seen with this guy.
Okay.
Because they saw he was like a psychic, he was an entertainer, he was a public guy. And then after the party went, or after, during the after party, they would go upstairs, and that's basically where they would have like their orgies, their cocaine parties. Cocaine was legal back then, by the way.
Yeah.
Live sex shows and dark rituals, and like the who's who of the Nazi party would come to his. And also, here's the other thing. Get this. Before Hitler got elected, the Nazis were considered kind of a joke party.
Okay.
This guy predicted in the newspaper that Hitler was going to be running Germany in a month. He printed it in the paper, and a month later, Hitler got elected chancellor. At that time, when he made that prediction, the Nazi party were considered a joke party.
And Hitler took it to the extremes.
And his prediction came exactly true.
Yeah.
There's another story where this guy said, like, he made the promise to Hitler, like, I can give you all the power in the world. I just got to do this one thing. And he said he had to go to Hitler's hometown and dig up a mandrake root.
Mandrake root, yeah.
Mandrake root has a lot of magical properties. And he said, you got to keep this mandrake root with you, dug up in your hometown. And around it in like a little vial was a little piece of paper, and it was a soul contract.
Oh.
For basically saying that as long as Hitler maintains the link between Hanussen, the mystic guy,
Right.
that piece of Mandrake, and Hitler himself, as long as they had a three-way link, Hitler's power would be unmatched.
Wow.
But if he broke the terms of that contract, it would all be taken away.
I wonder if he broke the contract like right before. I wonder if something happened. It's interesting to think.
And when the Nazis were starting out, they almost went bankrupt. They almost never made it.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who bailed them out financially.
Wow.
And he was the one who loaned them all this money.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that paid for like uniforms and cars. And here's the real kicker to make this thing even worse. This guy was Jewish. I mean, a full-blooded Jew, but he would go around lying to everyone, telling he was of Dutch aristocracy. This guy was Cisco. Do you know how they eventually found out he was Jewish? This guy would be sleeping with all like the chorus girls and participating in orgies, and like people began to notice, like, this guy's circumcised.
Oh, snap! That little kitty gif where you go, oh, snap! Maybe he should have kept his, what was his first name?
Eric.
Maybe he should have kept little Eric in
Yeah, that's
his
what
pants.
I'm saying. If you're like a guy who's
Are
like
you
hiding
serious?
your Jewishness in front of like all the top Nazi brass, I don't know, maybe try keeping your pants on.
But, I just brought up, here's me thinking, that brings the whole trip to the urinal a whole new thing because, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, here's another thing. Here's another thing that people need to know about this guy. This guy taught Hitler public speaking. Like he taught him, like they went up to him and they're like, how can he improve his oratory skills?
Right.
So she's like, let me teach you my mass hypnosis techniques. So when you see like, can you go back to that previous picture I showed you?
Sure, which one?
Where he's going like this.
Okay. Got it.
If you watch Hitler's speech, he does this pose, right?
Right.
He taught him that.
Oh, okay.
He taught him. He's doing this picture before Hitler got into power. He's not copying
Right.
Hitler. Hitler was copying him.
Right.
And one of the other things he taught Hitler is when you're making your proclamation, always be looking up as if you're talking to God.
Right.
He was the one that taught him all that.
Wow. Look at that. And it's
And
so
he was a
many
Jew.
levels, dude. Yeah. It's so many levels. That's one thing I said. It's like, if you think about how the Nazis work, they did every level. It's like they wouldn't just, like grab a can of Coca-Cola and you're studying that. We wouldn't just look at the can. They'd analyze the stuff in the can and what the can's made of, what's the paint made of. I mean, it's every layer. So you have to think about that with Nazis when they aired that person, I mean, I grew up as a child looking at barrels of gold teeth that they pulled out of, every little piece from the tattoos on their, everything. And it was just the most disgusting. But if you understand that, and you look at it, and you listen to Jim Mars, and you listen to Annie Jacobson, and you listen to the stuff that Donnie's come up with. I mean, we're just doing research on what's available, and now there's more things available if you really dig. But they let this stuff out because they think nobody cares anymore. And we do care. Yeah. We care now because of what happened in the past, and we're sorry for that. We're sorrowful. But we also want to know because we want to try to keep it from happening again and understand the signs of how these things happen, and they happen at a slow upgrade or grind. Mm-hmm. When they start separating people and start saying you shouldn't like that person because of this, because they're in that religion, or they wear blue jeans, or they have pink hair, or they believe this, then when they start trying to break you up and section you off, it's beginning. You got to pull back together and enjoy people for their differences and revel in the differences and learn from it, as long again as they're not hurting anybody, even themselves. I mean, you're hurting themselves. How many times have we said that about an addict? It's sad. It's so sad. But look at sometimes you do have to stop somebody from hurting themselves. But these people are hurting everybody else, and they think they're better than everybody.
Sometimes you have people who are flawed. Sometimes you have people who are bad. But sometimes you have people who are just outrageously evil.
With
power. This guy was outrageously evil.
Super villain. Absolutely
He was a real
evil.
supervillain.
You can tell in this picture here, I mean, the eyes are just so dead. And to know, takes a special kind of person to, there's fear will keep you from admitting who you are because you don't want to be that person, of course. But then there's people like George Soros who says he has no remorse whatsoever from going around and taking I think he was 10 or 11. I know he was younger than 13, going around as a Jew and watching people's houses being ransacked, watching things being taken from them. That was his job. He has no remorse for it. He was just doing his job, because if I didn't do it, somebody else would. And that's what the people, you have to understand, people went to work during this time, and they went home. They did these things and they went home to their families. That's a special kind of psychopath. That's a special kind of evil, and we have to know what it looks like so we can stop it from happening again. In this whole thing, Donnie, we wanted to end this tonight with a positive. There were so many people tonight, and this was Donnie's idea, and I love it, that we talked about. We talked about Errol Flynn. He was, we just stood up and we were told he was one way. He was shown one way. It was a lie. Von Braun, Disney. Sebottendorff. So many different people that were supposed to be a hero, but they turned out to be a villain.
Well, Sebottendorff was like the villain.
Yeah, evil. He was evil to evil. But you have one here, Donnie, that's almost a villain to a hero. Tell us about this one.
Okay, so this gentleman here, he goes by the name of William Hitler. He was the only living relative of Adolf Hitler when he was in power during World War II. He's actually the son of Hitler's half-brother. And he, when he was younger, when growing up, his family and Hitler's were actually pretty close with Adolf. And he remembered a lot of times hanging out with him. Adolf Hitler, his uncle, actually invited him to stay in Germany to be at his side and wanted him to be there with him. And he said, "You'll be set for life. You'll be right there with me." And this guy said, "No, you know what, uncle, screw you." And basically what he did is he moved to the UK and basically went to the British media and spilled all the beans. The whole notion that Hitler himself was part Jewish. This is the guy that broke that story.
Okay.
Because his goal was to undermine his uncle. Because when he saw what was going on, he's like, "Uncle, you do realize we're part Jewish, right?" And so it's like, "Damn, my uncle's a piece of crap."
Right.
So he goes over to the UK and he just yells. He just gives all the dirt about his uncle. And they said there's stories and accounts where during the war meetings Hitler would have with his generals, he would just be talking business. And sometimes there are victories here, problems here, but he's just business. Someone would show him a magazine article, or they'll show him the newspaper, and front page would be everything his nephew said about him, and he'd be screaming and smashing furniture. He's like, "William, I hate you," a curse. He's the guy that got under his skin.
Good.
He's the guy that Hitler would just mutter and angrily up and down the hallway just about how much he hated William.
Here's to you, William.
Nazi generals would walk up to him and give him an update of what's going on, and then Adolf would just be like, "Oh, by the way, I just hate my nephew William. God, I hate him so much." He would just stew on that all day. This guy got under Hitler's skin. So he winds up moving to the U.S., right? He writes a letter to FDR stating, "Listen, I'm not an American. My last name is Hitler. He's my uncle. But I want to do everything in my power to go against him. Can I please join, your military? I want to serve. I'm not a German. Here's my situation. Can you make an exception?"
There you go.
And at first, FDR is not cool about it. He's talking to intelligence officials. Do we trust this guy? Could he be a spy? But they're eventually, because they find out about all the secret and dirt he gave out to the public about Hitler, they're like, okay. He winds up joining the Navy, and he serves the rest of the war as a medic. So he served the war, just saving American soldiers' lives.
Awesome.
He didn't fight, no combat, but he would take combat wounded, and all he did throughout the war was just saving American soldiers' lives.
God bless him.
He winds up opening up a biotech lab in upstate New York and settles with his family. And they totally hide the fact that their last name is Hitler. They change their names. None of their neighbors know that they're related to Hitler. People said that they were like the most proudest, patriotic Americans at the parades. They were the first ones there.
Nice.
They were very sweet, but very private, and they spoke German to each other. Well, and then he eventually passes away, but he had 4 sons. Now,
Right.
this is the crazy part.
This is awesome.
The 4 sons made a pact, like early on in their lives when they were young, that none of them would ever get married or have kids because they all agreed that the Hitler bloodline dies with them. And you know what? When you look back on their lives, they all kept true to their word. None of them got married or had kids.
How about that? How about that?
I mean,
So there
this
he
guy
is.
was a freaking hero,
There you go.
and nobody knows about him. They,
Yep.
they should have made a movie about this guy's life. Seriously.
Right. And what a movie it would be.
And nobody
that's-
knows about it.
And that's the thing, Donnie. I mean, we talk about, I'm looking here in the chat here, about, our idols that, I'm heartbroken as idols that, once locked down, they started seeing that they didn't turn out to be the people that they thought. And, what do we do in that case? Well, I say, one, let's stop making stupid people famous. 2, let's stop putting people up on a pedestal because they're human beings. And, you could look back in my past, and if that's all you knew about me, you would think I was a jerk. I would tell you I was a jerk, But let's maybe focus on lifting people like this up. Maybe the kid, that's down the street that gave half his Christmas presents to somebody else because they didn't have anything, or these kids that save their money and go and buy socks for the homeless, or all of that. It's the hometown heroes. It's the dad that gets up or mom that gets up every morning and goes to work every day and pays the bills, and like we talked about before, eats the broken cookie because she wants to give the good cookies to her family. And then every once in a while we got to eat the good cookie for ourselves too. You got to take care of yourself. So we're putting light out. There's a lot of darkness tonight. We didn't get into the deep, dark, horrible stuff in all this. We kind of tiptoed around it because it's so bad, But we wanted to bring out a little bit of this. Let's take off the rose-colored glasses on some of these things and look at what they've done.
Well,
and
I was
what
just looking
they've
at the chat.
Fooled us with before. Go ahead.
I was just looking at the chat, and I was like, oh. And Enda was like, I was 5 years old and in love with Robin Hood. Give a kid a break.
Yep. Well, that's it. No, that's not. I
Yeah.
wasn't saying it for that, Edna. I wasn't. I was just talking about what idols and what that means. And I know you're not saying he was. Listen. There's been plenty of people I really liked. Listen, I'll never. Stephen King wasn't a hero to me, but I mean, I loved his writing and I loved everything. And then I started getting to know the man a little bit, and I found out that, and this is somebody I started reading at 12. I'm 60.
Yeah.
And I start reading and seeing what he really thinks about people. I'm like, oh gosh, I can't take any more of that. I just wish he'd just write and then stop talking because I don't like him. I mean, I've had that. I can think of 100 of them like that. But I'm not talking about, and Edna, I did not mean that towards you.
Well, I was about to say.
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
Don't be discouraged because
No.
for every Errol Flynn, there is a William Hitler.
There you go. Oh, beautiful, Donnie. That was beautiful. Yeah, and that's it. And those are the ones that aren't getting, sung. The heroes, the unsung hero. And, so many people, so many heroes, so many, people like that go. I can remember this one thing, and it was a guy who was always getting picked on in basic, in his basic training. It wasn't my unit; it was another. And you're teasing him and stuff like that. They throw a grenade in the midst and tell him because they think he's going to be scared and get scared and run. He jumps on it to save all his buddies.
Yeah.
That's an instant hero. He was treated different through the whole time, and the guys that pulled that trick on him weren't worthy of his honor. You see what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. I mean, there's been so many of these Hollywood people that we think are one thing, but they're not. And that's what it was supposed to do. Movies and podcasts and songs, music, all of that was meant to entertain us and show us a different world. It was meant to sell things and sell tickets and try to strive. But if you think about what Hollywood's done to young girls who feel like they've got to be really skinny, or guys that feel like they have to be that robust, lumberjack kind of guy, but they're not that way. They're a beautiful soul, and they have so much to offer the world, but the world's told them they got to look and act a different way. That's the kind of stuff Hollywood's been doing to us in the media and things like that. And just instead of just saying, be the best you can be the best human being you can be, but understand that this kind of evil goes on because we're the ones who have to stop it. The only way to stop evil is with good, and the only thing necessary for evil to exist is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke.
Yeah.
And nothing is truer. So here we are tonight. We're doing something. If the channel got pulled, we went out in a bang. We shouldn't get any copyrights. I ran through all this stuff. I can't tell you how much we worked on these videos. And for that one Errol Flynn video, man, I can't tell you, I had to load it 4 times tonight. I told Donnie, I don't think he wants me to play it. They're trying to stop me. And at the last minute, it came on. And I think it came on because I had a little talk. And I said, look, if it is you stopping me from doing this, because I'm literally thinking, like I said earlier when I started, I'm thinking, okay, 59 he passed. He probably went through a lot of the things he had to go through. He had to see the pain he caused. He should be at the point now, I mean, there's been a lot of years where he's ascended his consciousness and should understand. Or he didn't cross over and he's being a little jerk on this side like he was when he was here. So I said, if you are still here, here's the deal. You can cross. I know people. I can help you. But if you're trying to stop me from getting the truth out, I'll find a way to go around it because I don't give up. I said, this is natural, redhead. And I said, I'm getting the truth out on this tonight. And I came in here after I had the conversation, flicked on the thing, and fully expected to have to try to play it a different way. And it was up and running. I can't explain that. So maybe if he is, Earl, we're going to reach out to you tonight and tell you, look, cross over, quit bothering people. The house is gone. Everything you did on those movies is still the same. It's just we found out who you really are. You need help. Cross over, get that help, and start to heal your consciousness again. Or you're going to have to come back and have to do it again. And you might just meet up with some women this time who aren't going to take your bullshit.
And if you cause trouble, Errol Flynn, I'm going to send William Hitler over there to
there
to
you
slap
go.
you.
Who said that's a real hero right there. And unfortunately, like I said, they don't get propped up. That's why his picture's up here. William, we're going to end the show with you tonight. We love you. And
I mean, just look at those look at those eyes. He just looks like such a good soul, doesn't
kindness.
he? Just look at that. Look at that man's face.
That's what kindness.
His face, like you can almost see it sometimes.
Yeah, you can. That's a good point, Donnie. It really is. And God bless him. And for his 4 young men to say that they weren't going to have any children, and they stopped themselves from that, took a big part of their life away to honor this world by saying no more Hitler bloodline. Yeah. I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
The 4 sons were not perfect. One of the sons did wind up working for the IRS. So
there you go. There you go. But there it is. And there are heroes, and you all are heroes to me. I love each and every one of you. I really miss not being here all week.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I really miss seeing Steve afterward. I'm hoping soon he'll be back on. There's no word on that. Steve, are you still out there? Do you have any information on when your channel is going to be back up, or I don't know.
All I know is at 11 o'clock every night, I stare at my phone sitting there all sad.
Because there's nowhere to go.
Oh, reload. No, it's not there. Reload.
Well, we took it almost to 11 tonight, so we're just meeting in here tonight. And I love you all so much. If I missed anything, if you guys had any questions, I'll give you a few minutes if you want to put up a question on anything we talked about.
A few people were asking me if you got like something you want to send to me. I don't know. Would the email be the best way? Maybe Facebook? You can search my name on Facebook, but...
If they want to send something to you,
or if they want to ask me something, or
sure. Well, find you on Facebook, message
find me
you.
on Facebook.
A lot of people don't have Facebook on here, so if you want, if there's any reason you can't get hold of Donnie and you want to send him a message or something like that, send it to me, and I'll hook you guys up. because I know a lot of people can do Messenger, but they can't do the Facebook. So I could hook you up in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I would give my email, and I'm not against receiving email. The problem is my dad's got a bit of a Amazon shopping addiction, and it's linked to my account, which means I get all the. So it's like my email address is just flooded. with
So
receipts.
long.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's a nightmare.
But we can do that, or just put your questions.
But
down
you know
for
what?
my-
I'll put up my email just anyway. But if I don't see it, just keep in mind my dad is an Amazon
Make sure you
addict.
put something in the title bar that says, hey Donnie, from chat or something like that, so he can see it.
Oh, I don't even remember who said that they wanted to contact or anything, but.
Okay, well there you go.
I just know some people had some questions, so.
Sure, and if anybody has any questions now, like I said, we weren't going to get in so much in the, yeah, definitely Patriot 1749. And you can get me on my Facebook. You can get me it's journeythroughthegate@gmail.com. Send me an email. I'll get it. Journey Through the Gate. I know it's long. I didn't know. I would have made it, s@gmail.com. I swear I would have. But so it's journeythroughthegate@gmail.com, and I'll get it, or Messenger or Facebook. A lot of people I've hooked up with. Machinist, was it Fast something Machinist, and Blue. I'm going to contact them through email. I'm trying to get together so we can do a show. I'm finally getting my stuff back after Valentine's Day. It was rough. I mean, it's like that whole month is just
Busiest time of the year.
Yeah, it was something. It was the most chaotic Valentine's I've ever had, and I've had like 38 of them. But small shop, just people do things differently. It was, it was crazy. It made a lot of roses. It made a lot of people happy. I always think about it, at least people are doing this in love or something. At least they're caring about something. It's something nice to do, so that's nice. And
they're trying real hard to get out of the doghouse.
Yeah, guess what Mario did? I wonder, he might still be listening. If he did, he's going to laugh. So this whole time during Valentine's Day, we're all laughing about, what our, guys do or our partners and stuff do for us. Valentine's, and I'm like, I don't get flowers. I get a big heart-shaped thing of chocolate, and I put all my cards every year, for that year, in that heart-shaped chocolate. So birthday cards, Christmas cards, all that. So I have them in years, just something I do. Mario always gets me chocolate. I come home, guess what he did this year? He bought me flowers. The biggest vase of flowers ever. And he got them from my shop. Yeah, and he got them from my shop. But you know what? They were so beautiful, and it was so nice to have my own. I took them apart, and I rearranged them. I put them all over the house, and it was fun. And I got to do it for me, and I hadn't been able to do that in a long time.
I just got to answer Blue Crossroads question real quick.
Go right ahead. Here we go.
Currently, I am at my friend's house. I am in North Carolina on a business trip. And I have a bunch of friends here, and I'm just visiting their place right now and using their computer. I will, next
Isn't
time
that
I'm
nice?
back, I will be back to sitting on the floor of my room on my phone. Next time I'm here, so.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure doing this with you, Donnie. I mean, I was absolutely shocked when the whole thing again started with Lindbergh, and then it just rolled in, and I found, some wonderful people. I've always been, with Jim Mars, and somewhere there's a book that's autographed to me with my name on it that I never got because he passed before it was sent, and it's sad because he's really a brilliant mind, and his books are amazing, and I wish he was here right now because a lot of things he said in about 3 different books is actually happening as we speak. Yeah. So there's that. So there's that, and I love you so much. Steve, we're again sending love and good energy out to you. Anybody tonight that's having pain, we did lose Mr. Fluffy. And if anybody could send hugs to Laura tonight, I love you, my love. I haven't been talking much about it because I didn't want to keep bothering you. But tonight we're sending you love, and you will see her again. And I actually did a little video for Steve and I, like I did for Donnie with Cisco with us. I did a nice one for Steve. Steve absolutely approved the new zombie Steve for the beginning of Monday Madness, and I put Ghost Kitty in there for Fluffy.
Oh, I thought it was Hulk Steve. I didn't know it was Zombie Steve.
No, it's Zombie Steve.
Oh, I thought it does look like Hulk. I thought it was Hulked out Steve.
Yeah, it does look like Hulk. But that is for all of our furry loves that are waiting for us in a better place. So that's there for forever for Laura and Fluffy. So I love you guys very much. Hugs to everybody. I'm sorry it was kind of a dark thing tonight, but I thought it needed to be done. I don't know what Donnie and I are going to do next, but these shows, like I said, it take a lot of research, a lot of time.
Yeah.
So we're going to do these about once a month, I think, Donnie, and he'll be popping in and out all the time anyway as a
I'll just
co-host.
be in and out.
Having so much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun. And I hope you enjoyed some of this. I hope you found some good books to maybe check in, or at least, the very least, the interviews, Lisa Perlman and Miss Annie Jacobson. You're going to absolutely love her. And for sure, check out some of Jim Marr's books too. They're out there, and all his interviews are there as well. He's been around a long time, and I'm so glad to take over some of the stuff he was doing tonight.
And also, real quick plug.
Go ahead.
Check out Creepy Unsolved if you haven't subscribed
Yes.
there yet. That's Dylan's channel.
Dylan has put out some great
Laura
stuff.
and I also work with Dylan on that channel here and there, and he puts out a lot of good stuff.
Yes, Creepy Unsolved on YouTube, putting out some great stuff.
Try to check that out.
Also, Laura's channel, Midnight in the Mountains.
Midnight in the Mountains. I'm assuming he's already listening to that.
Yeah. But it's really good. I need to check the one that she had with Rob Guttrow. I've been trying to catch that.
I'm waiting for that one. I'm waiting for it.
Yeah. And
I'm
Patriot
waiting in anticipation.
1749, it's good to have you back, love. Lots of love and light your way. I know you've been struggling too. Good to see you back on your feet.
Yeah.
Everybody in this chat is a hero tonight. I love you all. You're heroes to me because you let your light shine. Even on drab days, you find a way to reach out in this chat and in other chats I've seen you in. I am so proud to be affiliated with each and every one of you, and I am so grateful that you chose to turn in tonight and come back tomorrow night, and we will be doing the Haunted Tennessee with Eric from Unseen Paranormal. We're going to have some fun, and hopefully Steve will be feeling well enough to join us for that. We're hoping. So there you go. I love you all. Don't let this depress you tonight, because we moved through it. We are very resilient. Human beings are extremely resilient, and we rose above that. We will rise above anything they throw at us, because we have each other, we have the light, and it always wins. There you go. So just don't give up. Good night, gatekeepers. I love you all. Donnie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, gosh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. I'm sorry it's over, man. I want to see that Errol Flynn one again.
Yeah. I mean, we're almost at the 3-hour mark.
I know.
Time flew.
I know it did. It did, and we barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But we managed to do it without getting too crazy. You know what I mean? Love you guys. Have a good night, everybody. If I can find my thing. All my stuff is so messed up now. But that's okay. We'll be all right. Here we go. And good night, everybody. Good night, Donnie.
Good night. Bye.